Think that's all good. Gonna put out the tweet. Come on. Here we go. Delete the old one. Delete. Alright. Just gonna wait for some people to come in. I'm gonna actually just... Alright, I'm gonna delete that one. Hello! How's it going? Okay, I'm just gonna delete that. I know it's been like 2 weeks or something since I last streamed. Yeah, actually no, like 3 weeks I'd say. Yeah, about 3 weeks since I last streamed. We're not playing video games today. Hold on. It says that my Twitch is like unstable. But like, I don't know if I buy that. Channel. Here, go to my channel. Alright, yeah, okay. We're live. Alright. I'm gonna just take that down. Hello! So we are live. We're just gonna be doing a discussion stream today. I don't think I'm really gonna be playing, we might play some Counter-Strike 2 later. I think I might do that. I'm gonna play, I think by the end of this, we're gonna play some Counter-Strike 2. Because I feel like playing that. But anyway, today I wanted to do something a little different. I had put out like a tweet recently about doing this. But today we're just gonna be doing some discussion. So this is just gonna be kind of a chatting stream. Where I'm gonna be talking about music. Specifically gonna be talking a lot about like heavy metal and punk music because I'm a big fan of both of those types of music. Pretty much all of, if not most of, if not all of my favorite bands are pretty much all like metal and punk bands or musicians. So that's kind of that's the perspective I wanted to give today on this music discussion. But we're going to be starting off this. I'm going to be talking about a couple of bands that are pretty important to me, but I figured I wanted to start this with a band that just returned and has been, been talked about a lot within the past few days. I think they're a very important band to me. They're probably not one of my all-time favorite bands, but definitely when I was in high school and a young lad, this band was very important to me. So we're going to be talking, of course, about Linkin Park. We're going to be doing some tier lists, actually. I'm going to be ranking some discographies. Yeah, that's right. I'm going full fucking Anthony Fantano today with these tier lists. But, yeah, I just wanted to kind of give him a little bit of a retrospective on Linkin Park's discography thus far. Because I basically, since this new song of theirs came out, and I did see the live stream. I was actually at a video game store, and they had the live stream on it. I had no idea it was happening. So I was like, oh, okay, so new singer. And yeah, Emily Armstrong, she's good. Like, she's serviceable. Nobody's ever going to replace Chester, but I thought at the very least she was serviceable. However, shortly after that, I think anyone who's been up on the news about Linkin Park in the last week knows about the several controversies surrounding Emily Armstrong as of late. Her being associated with the Church of Scientology, as well as being at a court hearing for a convicted rapist. It's not looking good right now. I think a lot of people right now are kind of scratching their heads thinking like why Mike Shinoda and company would have jumped the shark with somebody with such a controversial past. So she did make a statement about it. she did apologize for being at the hearing of this person. I'm going to be honest. I have no idea who he is. Apparently, he is an actor and also a member of the Church of Scientology. He was on that '70s show, which I've never seen. That's like not from my time. that is, I grew up during the 2000s. That not my time, and I've never seen that '70s show. So I have no idea who this guy is, but all I know is that he's a creep and he's convicted of rape and is, I think, currently serving like time. So, but I don't really want to get super into that. If you want to know more about it, just look up some articles or look up some, or just watch like Fantano's video on the situation. But basically the short end of it is like, I thought the new song was good. It kind of just felt like a B, C tier Minutes to Midnight song. I thought Emily's vocals were okay. But I think honestly, and I think that she's at least serviceable. I don't know if she was the absolute best pick, but I think she's good. But I think we have to, I think she and maybe some of the members of Linkin Park really have to make a statement in order for everyone to kind of move forward with this, because the situation that Emily has kind of caught herself in is a pretty big elephant in the room. And it's definitely attracted the attention of Chester's family, Cedric from At the Drive-In. It's not a good look for anybody. So I think, in my opinion at least, I think the best decision for her is to completely disown and condemn the Church of Scientology. I don't want to really tell anyone how to live or what religious movement they should be involved in, but I think for all intents and purposes, Scientology is a pretty big, a pretty shady organization. If you know anything about like some of the horrible shit that they've tried to cover up. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. I wanted to talk about Linkin Park, how I remember them prior to Chester's passing, and how I think their discography as it currently stands before this new record comes out. Yeah, definitely got to watch the Scientology episode on South Park. That pretty much just sums up Scientology in a nutshell, if we're being honest. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about Linkin Park. Not one of my all-time favorite bands, but a very important band to me when I was young. And yeah, I'm going to be ranking their discography on a tier list here. So let's get this started. First, I actually want to give an honorable mention to Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory EP, which was an EP that they dropped in 1999 prior to the release of the album Hybrid Theory. They were actually, their name at the time was Hybrid Theory. They changed their name to Linkin Park the following year, I believe. And yeah, that EP is really good. I know it's on Apple Music and Spotify because it got reissued with the Hybrid Theory 20th anniversary box set. So I would highly recommend checking out that stuff. It's got a lot of really good stuff that was kind of left on the cutting room floor. The song Carousel, Step Up, High Voltage, and you know, so there's a bunch of great songs on that EP. Yeah, I actually would love to see Linkin Park get inducted into the Hall of Fame. I really don't care about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame personally. I think they're kind of a joke. But no, I think that would be cool to kind of see them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But I would say, at the very least, they should be inducting Iron Maiden and Judas Priest before. Did Priest get inducted into the Hall of Fame? I don't even remember. If they did, it had to have been recently. Is Judas Priest in the Hall of Fame? Okay. Yeah, Judas Priest. Okay. Judas Priest got inducted in 2022. I actually completely forgot about that. But Iron Maiden is not. But also Bruce Dickinson said he does not like. Yeah, Motorhead definitely needs to be in the Hall of Fame. But Bruce Dickinson has also said he does not care about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so he could literally give less of a shit if he's in it or not. But I think at the very least, even if he and the rest of the band didn't show up, they should at least be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, the Sex Pistols are in the Hall of Fame, and they refuse to attend, so it's completely up to the artist whether or not they choose to attend. But yeah, I'd like to see Linkin Park in the Hall of Fame. But anyway, yes, very based, Bruce. Anyway, we're going to start with Linkin Park's first album, their major label debut, and that would be Hybrid Theory. Oh, this album was huge. Not just to my generation, but to I'm Gen Z. This was huge to the millennial generation, probably to some Gen Xers. Like, this was probably one of the biggest albums of all time. I mean, it's got In the End, Crawling, Paper Cuts, One Step Closer, just so many like iconic tracks, not only in the world of nu metal, but just music at large. Like, the impact that this album has had, whatever I say right now will never do it justice. It's one of those records that, but also being such a successful record and having so many eyes on it, it's very easy to kind of pick apart maybe some of the more nitpicky elements about it. I think there isn't really too much wrong with this record. It's a great album. I think the production is great. I think all the performances are awesome. I think that Linkin Park was definitely one of those bands who, I think it deserved a diamond certification, definitely, especially for the singles alone. I mean, the singles are like anthems. They're definitely modern day rock anthems. However, I think that with such a big success, it's kind of easy to point out a lot of the flaws with it. I think maybe songwriting, Linkin Park was still, finding their footing. I think it's not like the songwriting jumps all over the place in terms of topics. I mean, it's very focused on what it wants to talk about, personal struggles and, mental issues and maybe even some, societal issues. But I think overall this was a very good starting point for Linkin Park, and I think that this album definitely earned its success. So I'm going to put this in A tier. Maybe that's a bit of a hot take. I think a lot of people, and especially hardcore Linkin Park fans, would put that in S tier, but personally, I would probably give this album an 8 out of 10. I think it's very good, but I don't think it's perfect by any means, so I'm going to put that in A tier. But next is Meteora. Now, this, in my opinion, is their best album. This is their best album by far. Meteora, in my opinion, took everything that Linkin Park did right on Hybrid Theory and multiplied it by like 5. Like, the songs are heavier. The songs have more punch. The production is tighter. The mixing is amazing. The continued fusion of, I know that Linkin Park has been labeled as nu metal, especially in this era of their career. But I think, honestly, they don't really fall into that category. When I think nu metal, I think like Limp Bizkit, Korn, and like Papa Roach, like bands like that. Like bands like Linkin Park and even like Slipknot and System of a Down, like they don't really fit the nu metal label. Like Linkin Park, they're one of those bands that they're a rock band at heart, I believe, but they're one of those bands that's not afraid to fuse genres. And I think because of the time they came out, it was kind of easy to just be like, oh yeah, they're a nu metal band, put them with all those other ones. But I don't really think Hybrid Theory, I think Hybrid Theory is definitely a nu metal album to an extent, but Meteora to me kind of starts to shed that and goes more towards just being like, their own unique fusion of pop music, rap music, heavy metal music, and and electronica. And I think Meteora really does the best out of all of their records in terms of what they set out to do with that. I hope I'm getting my words across right. It's not that I'm tired. I got plenty of sleep last night. It's just sometimes I feel like albums this big are so hard to talk about because they're so grandiose and they're so they're so amazing that I feel like some words just can't do it justice. And again, Linkin Park, I won't say are like, they're not even really in my top 25 favorite bands, but Meteora, definitely as an album, definitely in my top 20 favorite albums. Easy. Like, maybe even my top 10. I'm not sure. But I love Meteora to death. I think it's a fantastic album. I mean, Don't Stay, Somewhere I Belong, Lying From You, Faint, Breaking the Habit, Numb. Like, Numb alone. Numb is such a fantastic song. To me, Numb is what they took, like, what they were doing with In the End and Crawling on the first record. And I think they were like, we definitely have to have a song on this record that's akin to that. But, oh, don't worry. We're getting to 1,000 Suns. I have a lot to say about that. You're going to be seeing some serious hot takes in this stream. I think, honestly, my first biggest hot take is putting Hybrid Theory in only A tier, but, you know, that's besides the point. But anyway, yeah, just Numb alone was like, yeah, we need to take, Collision Course, it was an EP. I'm only doing studio albums on this tier list. But if I was to put Collision Course on this, it'd probably be B tier. Collision Course is a really good EP. I would recommend checking it out. But yeah, Numb to me is like taking, like, we definitely have to have an In the End song, like an In the End on this album. And to me, Numb kind of takes what they did with that song and that concept and multiplied it just several times over. Or at least for me, In the End is kind of Mike Shinoda's opportunity to shine, whereas Numb is really Chester's opportunity to shine on, you know, a ballad, if you could call it that. I think the better word for it is anthem. But anyway, I think I've talked enough about Meteora. It's a fantastic record. If you haven't heard it, please go listen to it, and Hybrid Theory. They're both amazing records. Meteora goes in S tier, like, undoubtedly. That is a solid 9, maybe even a 10 out of 10 record. Next, though, we're starting to get into maybe some of the more controversial moments in Linkin Park's career. I don't think anything will be as controversial as what they're currently going through with them, Emily Armstrong and the Scientology stuff. But this, I think, was the first big controversy, the first big, like, what the hell moment in their discography. And that would be their third record, Minutes to Midnight. I like this album. I think it's good. I don't love it. I don't think it's, like, amazing or anything, but it's got some banger songs, you know, Bleed It Out, What I've Done. There's also some really good deep cuts on the album. I think The Little Things Give You Away is a good song. I like the song Leave Out All the Rest. Shout Out of the Day. You know, there's some good songs. Oh yes, rest in peace, Lord Vader. I was very upset about that, but yes, rest in peace to James Earl Jones. Yes, there are some very good songs. Yeah, No More Sorrow is also a great song. But this is a very different album for Linkin Park. This is them, I think, starting to realize that maybe the rap rock fusion was starting to get a little stale. I mean, nu metal as a genre was really starting to get stale and start to die off. I mean, Limp Bizkit broke up in, like, what, 2004, 2005 initially, and then they got back together in, like, 2009. Slipknot was definitely changing their sound, and Corey was spending more time at Stone Sour. Stained and, like, other nu metal acts and like alt metal acts from the time were definitely kind of, you know, like, people stopped giving a shit about them. And System of a Down by 2004 had already, like, drastically changed their sound from, like, their alt metal roots to doing more experimental stuff. So I think it was definitely time for change. I don't know if this was the absolute best direction to go in, but I think it was a change that was necessary for Linkin Park to feel like they could do more than just what their fans expected of them. So Minutes to Midnight, it's definitely not a perfect album by any means. It's definitely more radio rock friendly, but even then, I think that it did not fall flat on its face. It's a good album. It's not great. I don't love it, but I'll listen to it every once in a while. Like, I had to re-listen to all these albums for this tier list, and I liked Minutes to Midnight. Like, I wasn't crazy about it when I first heard it some years ago, and I hadn't really listened to it in full since. But, yeah, I think Minutes to Midnight is a worthy album in Linkin Park's discography. I think that's going to go in B tier. Now, if Minutes to Midnight was controversial, and polarizing to a lot of fans, nothing compares to the amount of polarizing reception that Minutes to Midnight got as to what A Thousand Suns got. A Thousand Suns is, I think, objectively their most divisive album in their entire discography. When this was released, the Linkin Park were pretty much saying, oh yeah, so we want to do more of a concept album, try new things, maybe try different sounds. Like, we don't want to just be confined to what we did on our first two records in Minutes to Midnight. We want to kind of go grandiose. We want to explore more stuff. And I feel like I think they did a good job with it, personally. I think that most of the songs are pretty good on this album. This isn't the first time that I think Linkin Park has really tried to do an electronica. This is definitely not the first time they attempted to do an electronica, or I'll go as far as to say that A Thousand Suns is pretty much straight up a pop record. Like, it has a lot of pop aesthetics, a lot of pop melodies. I'm going on record saying I think that Thousand Suns is a pop record. And being that this is one of like, I would say the 3 albums in their discography that is objectively a pop record, I think this is the best one in there. I think this is the best one they've done. But yeah, there are some blaring issues with this album. Mainly, yes, there are, as William Shaw said, way too many interludes. And I honestly didn't mind there being so many interludes. I think that they should have just been combined together. Like, the Requiem and the Radiance are 2 separate tracks, but they feel like they're supposed to be the same song. Like, I was listening to the album and I didn't even notice that the Radiance with the Oppenheimer speech was actually a completely different song. I thought it was just part of the Requiem, which it should have been. I don't understand why it needed to take up a whole other track listing on the album. So I don't mind that no, we're not rating Moon Man's best albums. That's fucked up now. But yeah, I think I really don't mind a lot of the interludes. I think that they definitely are serviceable to what the band was going for. I mean, this album definitely touches on a lot of, big subjects. I mean, the concept of this album has to do with nuclear warfare and, the threat of apocalypse and tons of other things. But I feel like just the controversy surrounding this sounding so different from their previous albums, added with the fact that I think the track listing is a bit messy, I feel like that concept kind of gets lost in translation. So, again, this is not a terrible album by any means. I actually do like A Thousand Suns. I think it's a good album. Yes, in the words of Guar, let bombs explode, because that's what they're for. But not nuclear weapons. We don't need nuclear weapons. That's the one thing I'll say. So I think A Thousand Suns was definitely an ambitious undertaking. I think it was necessary for them to attempt it. Whether or not they completely succeeded in what they were going for is completely up for debate. I think that they Linkin Park have aged 100 times better than Lost Prophets. What are you saying? Lost Prophets, I mean, you can't even compare those two. Linkin Park have definitely aged better than Lost Prophets, no doubt. Yeah, I know. I heard about that, and let's just say I'm not happy. I know I was never even a fan of Lost Prophets. I just know about their singer and how much of a horrible person he is. And I'm not going to discuss any of that because if I do, I could get demonetized. I'm not even kidding. The shit he's done is so bad, I could literally get demonetized just for talking about it. But yeah, if you're curious to know anything about Lost Prophets, just look it up. And be prepared for some really nasty shit. Yeah, Waiting for the End, The Catalyst, The Messenger. I really like the song When They Come For Me. I thought that was a great song. Definitely kind of a different song for Linkin Park, but I really love the primal drums and you know, the chanting. I thought that was a great song in my opinion. Definitely one of Mike Shinoda's best showcase of his rapping abilities too, in my opinion. Oh my god. I gotta look that up. I actually haven't heard about that. The Watto thing. I know who Watto is, obviously, Star Wars, but yeah, I'd have to say Thousand Suns, good album. I just think that they didn't really 100% succeed with with the concept they were going for on this album. I think it kind of got lost in the midst of everything else, like just the sound and just all the interlude tracks. It kind of got a little muddled, so I'm gonna put that in C tier. I'd recommend listening to it though, and because you might love it. I did not love it, but I did not hate it either. I thought it was a good album, and I'll leave it at that. I was tempted to kind of put it in B tier, but I think I got to put it in C tier because there are a lot more overarching problems with this album than there are with Minutes to Midnight. Now, let's talk about Living Things. I'm going to say prior to the release of One More Light, this was my least favorite Linkin Park record. I hated this album. I did not like it. I thought it was super boring, super overproduced. Just, I did not think that they could make a worse album. And in some ways, I don't think they have. It's yet to be seen whether or not From Zero will be worse than this album. And in a lot of ways, I think One More Light is definitely a worse record. But one thing that, and I don't want to go too much into One More Light because I am going to talk about it, but one thing I'll give One More Light over this album is that at least it's consistent. Like One More Light, it's consistently bad the whole way through, but Living Things is so up and down, and it opens up with some tracks that aren't terrible. Like they're not bad by any means, but they don't feel like I'm listening to a Linkin Park album. Like the first the first two albums, the first two songs on this album don't even sound like the whole band is there. It literally just sounds like Mike, Chester, and Johan just making electronica music. And it kind of I'm like, this wasn't terrible, but it left me scratching my head being like, is this even Linkin Park? And but by the time Burn It Down came around, Burn It Down I think was a good album, and by that time it really started to sound, you could hear the drums a lot more, you could definitely hear the guitar and bass. And so I think from like Burn It Down to Castle of Glass, like the whole like second half of the beginning of this album was pretty good. I liked Burn It Down, Lies, Greed, Misery, I'll Be Gone, Castle of Glass. I thought all those songs were pretty good. I did like those songs. But then after that, and I was also happy because I was also happy because like, especially I'll Be Gone and like Lies, Greed, Misery, and Burn It Down, you can hear the drums, you can hear the guitar, you can hear, yes, I can't believe that the Saw franchise has been around this long. And also, speaking of Saw, Chester Bennington was also in Saw 3D, which is a little interesting piece of trivia. But anyway, but yeah, I think the first half of this album was very mixed at best. It wasn't horrible, but then the second half of this album was such a slog to get through. Oh my God, Victimized, Roads Untraveled, Skin to Bone, Until It Breaks. Oh my God, all of those songs, in my opinion, range from boring to just flat out awful. They're terrible. And then the song Tinfoil is, just an interlude track. Not a bad interlude. It's mostly just kind of the precursor to Powerless. And I don't think Powerless was a terrible song. I just don't know if it was the right song to end the album with. So no, I don't like Living Things. I don't like this album. It is not Linkin Park's best by any means. And yeah, it's just very boring, very muddled, and at times kind of cringeworthy. So I think I gotta put it in. You know what? No, I'm gonna do this. Add row below. I'm doing this because I don't even think that it's a D tier album. I'm also going to change the color of F tier to just gray. I'm putting E tier. I think that it's not even a D tier album. It's not good. Not a good album. I don't like this album. So I'm putting that in E tier. But now, at the very least, Linkin Park, I think maybe they knew this wasn't really a great album. So, and a lot of people I think were disappointed with the existence of A Thousand Suns and Living Things. So I think they took the time, were like, okay, let's give the fans what they want, and that's a rock album. But we're not going to do Meteora or Hybrid Theory again. We want to do something different. And what we got was The Hunting Party. I like this album. I actually really like it. I think it's a very good album. I think that I honestly kind of like this album more than Minutes to Midnight. I am not even kidding. I listened to it once when it first came out, thought it was good, didn't really listen to it again. But on re-listen, good, very good album. I like the raw production on a lot of these tracks. There's a lot more influence from hardcore music and just, loud rock music, noise rock. You can hear a lot of subtle references, subtle nods to grunge music as well. It's also a very collaborative album. There's definitely a lot of punk flavor sprinkled all over this album, and that's what I really love about it. And there's also a lot of features on this album as well. Some of them are a bit weird, though, I will say. Paige Hamilton on All for Nothing does a good job, but Guilty All the Same, I think, is a good song, but I really don't think it needed Rakim on the song. I mean, he felt like his part was not bad. Rakim is a great rapper, but it felt very out of place. It's just kind of Guilty All the Same was kind of this... It felt like a Beastie Boys song when Beastie Boys was still a hardcore band, and putting Rakim on that song, I don't think it really worked that well. But it was, I think, at least yeah. I think at least it really didn't need him, but for some reason I was not mad that he was there. There's also great songs on this one. Until It's Gone, I think, is a great song. War is also a banger track. This is undoubtedly a rock album. What the hell? Wait, it just said I'm now live. Hold on. I gotta go check my Twitch real quick. Wait, did my stream just shit out? What the fuck? Hold on. I gotta go check my channel. Oh, it's freaking Ouroboros. Come on, channel. Oh wait, I'm already there. My bad. No, it says I'm still running. Huh, that's weird. Okay. Well, never mind. Sorry about that. Yeah, technology sucks, man. Yeah, I think... And also, there's a song called Rebellion, which has Darren from System of a Down on it. And it pretty much is just exactly what you'd expect from it. It sounds like if Linkin Park and System of a Down wrote a song together, that's what you'd get. And I think it does a good job. The weirdest one, though, Tom Morello is on the song Drawbar, which is, I think just an interlude track. I couldn't even tell if he was on the song. I did not hear... Oh, you suck, man. You suck. You suck. You suck. You suck. No, I love you. I love you. I want to kiss you. But anyway, yeah, the song Drawbar was weird. It apparently has Tom Morello on it, but I did not hear any of his guitar on that album. And Tom Morello has a very distinctive guitar sound, and I guess he was on the song? I don't know. You said, you know what? Yeah, I've seen Napalm Death live like 3 times, and I'm like the only person who ever like gets ready for that song because everyone else is like calming down, and then when they play it, everyone's like, no, play it again, I wasn't ready. I'm like, well, you got to pay attention. But yeah, Napalm Death is amazing live. I'm not doing a Napalm Death tier list, though, because I haven't listened to all of their albums. I've only listened to the albums that I've wanted to hear from them, which are pretty much just their early stuff and, like, their latest stuff. Like, I haven't listened to any of, like, their 90s groove metal albums because I don't really care to hear them. I mostly just listened to, like, their first few albums and then everything they've done from, like, 2000 onward. Tom Morello versus Steve Vai versus Slash. Who wins? Tom Morello. No doubt. I think he's the best guitar player out of all of them, in my opinion. But yeah, I think Hunting Party, I think I talked about it enough. Hunting Party, good album. I'm going to put that in B tier. But now we're coming to the end of this tier list, and ooh boy, One More Light. So I'm going to go on record and say I don't like this album. I straight up don't like it. I didn't like it when it came out, and I don't like it now. However, this is a difficult album to talk about because it was released shortly before Chester's death. And in some ways, I think that the lyrics on this album have aged a little bit better in the wake of his passing, which is, of course, sad to say. You know, for an album to have any meaning, like somebody had to die, that is actually kind of a sad thing to think about. But I think in hindsight, some of the lyrics were always kind of pretty good, in my opinion. I think that lyrically it's a lot tighter than Living Things. However, musically, this is every single problem I had with Living Things times like 100. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention about Hunting Party, actually, before we move on, I'm sorry. I could, like, not tell if James Hahn was even on the album. I think that's my only major problem with the album, is that they really didn't utilize James Hahn very well. But on the same note, I feel like on One More Light and even Living Things, I feel like these two albums, and especially One More Light, was just Mike, Chester, and James Hahn just going into a studio and writing a solo record with the three of them and just kind of being like, okay, so what part of this song can we use the rest of the guys on? And then, you know, then when they figure that out, they're like, okay, guys, you can come back in the studio now. We need you. So, so that's really how this and Living Things really felt, and it's especially feels like that on this record. This barely, in my opinion, not just because it's like a radio pop album, but there's very little of the band on this album. Like I said, it mostly just feels like the only people who played on this were Chester, Mike, and James Hahn. Like, this really does not feel like a Linkin Park album at all. Even at least Living Things, there were some songs that at least felt like I was listening to a band, but with One More Light, no. Although I will say that one other thing I'll give over with this album over Living Things, it has the song One More Light, which I think is a very good ballad. Even when that song came out before Chester's passing, I thought it was a good song, but that's really the only song I really liked on the album. And I think that a song like that could have worked on any of these albums. And it really got overshadowed because this was specifically like an electro pop album. And I'm like very tempted to put it in F tier. However, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, it's just, yeah, no, I'm going to have to I'll put it in E tier. Actually, no, here's what I'll do. I don't think that I'm comfortable calling this an F tier. I'll just say it's One More Light. It's their weakest album, and we're just gonna put it at that. So yeah, that's Linkin Park's discography. I think that honestly, this is at least how I feel about their discography. I don't know if this is the objective truth or how everybody. This is definitely, I don't think, how everyone else would rank this thing. I think most people would want to put Hybrid Theory and Meteora in S tier at the very least, but I think at its best, Hybrid Theory is at least an A tier record. Oh yeah, I'm. Don't worry, I am doing Green Day. In fact, I was gonna do I'm doing Metallica next, but after that, I'll do Green Day. Oh yes, I love King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Also, their new. I don't think it's their latest album, but the recent metal album they did with like the lizard on the front cover. That was a great album. Yeah, maybe I'll do maybe I'll do Limp Bizkit. You know what? No, let's do Limp Bizkit really quick. So just give me a minute. Okay. Because I actually let's do Limp Bizkit really quick before I do Metallica. I'm actually going to queue up the Metallica tier list. My brother is a diehard fan, would probably disagree, but I can't fault for your opinions. Yeah, again, it's my opinions are my opinions, and whatever opinions people have about Linkin Park's discography are also completely valid. I'm not trying to tell anybody, how they feel about music. It's all subjective at the end of the day. And hold on. I'm trying to find like a tier list for Limp Bizkit, and none of them have like their recent album. Okay, here we go. It's Limp Bizkit's LPs. All right, so I'm going to leave the Linkin Park tab open just so maybe we can go back to that later. Anyway, let's talk about Limp Bizkit. Possibly one of the most polarizing and controversial... actually, I'm going to add brackets as I go. One of the most controversial and polarizing... rock groups in all of history. I like Limp Bizkit. I'm not going to go as far as to say they're an amazing band or that, they're super underrated. People hate them for a reason, and it's pretty easy to see why. I just like them because I like memes, and Limp Bizkit is nothing but a huge meme at this point. But anyway, I do have a lot to say on these. The unquestionable truth, is not here, but that's also not one of their LP. Yes, of course, I've watched their Woodstock 99 set. That was unhinged. Woodstock 99 was also just an unhinged festival. But anyway, Unquestionable Truth is not on this list because it's not one of their LPs. I'm only going to be ranking their LPs, but if I was to rank it, it would probably be an D or E tier. It's not very good. Or maybe even F tier, actually. I don't even know. But anyway, let's start with the band's first album. So I kind of want to go through these because I don't have a ton to say, because what really is there to say about Limp Bizkit that hasn't already been said in terms of why they're a pretty mid band in the grand scheme of things. But $3 Bills, y'all, in all honesty, was a good album. It's definitely got some pretty raw production, and I don't know if raw production really suits a band like Limp Bizkit, but overproduction definitely does not either. It definitely has to strike a balance. But $3 Bills, y'all, it's got some really good songs on it, like especially the first half of the album I really like. Like the song Pollution, I still bump every once in a while, as well as Counterfeits, Stuck, some other like good stuff. Their cover of Faith is also pretty good in my opinion. Yeah, it's a good album. I think that in the middle it kind of gets a little boring, but I think it starts to pick back up at the end again. I think I'll put this one in B tier. I'll say B tier. I think objectively, in the grand scheme of things, more of a C tier album. But if we're going off of Limp Bizkit quality here, it's definitely B tier. Now we got Significant Other. This is probably their most recognized or like their most success. I don't think it's their most successful. I think Chocolate Starfish is probably their most successful because it's their fastest selling album. But Significant Other, I think, is probably their most iconic album. I mean, the artwork is very iconic. I mean, this guy on the cover has pretty much kind of become their unofficial mascot. I mean, on their most recent album, they straight up have him on the cover. So yeah, this guy on Significant Other is probably is pretty much their mascot at this point. And there are some pretty fun songs on this album. It's a pretty novel album, I'd say. But I think it's a fun nu metal album, and at the very least, it gives me a lot more to talk about than some of the other bands at the time. Like, say what you want about Limp Bizkit. I know that they are often considered like the bottom of the barrel when it comes to nu metal, but at least they give me more to talk about than Papa Roach or Stained or even whatever, like, I love Korn, but whatever Korn was doing in the 2000s after Head left, at least, or like Power Man 5000, like all these like trash nu metal bands, like these, Limp Bizkit at least gives me something to talk about. Like, you might remember them for the wrong reasons, but at least they're memorable. You know, these other bands that I mentioned, like, you're just going to forget about them. So yeah, there's some cool stuff on this one. The opening track, Just Like This, is fun. Nookie is a cheesy banger. Break Stuff, love that song because, you know, it's just some days where you don't want to wake up. You know, everyone can relate to that. You know, anyone who says that song is bad, I'll grab a chainsaw and skin your ass raw. But yeah, there's some other cool songs on this album. Rearranged is a nice little slow song for them. End Together Now with Method Man is a fun song. 1999 is a fun song. So yeah, there's some good songs on this album. Yeah, but I think I'll put this in A tier. I'm gonna put that in A tier. Now there's Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water. This was a pretty rushed album, if we're being honest. Instrumentally, it's pretty banging. Like, I think this album has Wes Borland's best guitar work, like hands down. This is his best guitar work in this band. Sam Rivers, John Otto, and DJ Lethal, they all bring so much to the table with this album. And it's kind of a miracle that musically it's so good in the time it took to make it, because this came out, like, I think only a year after Significant Other. But where it really falls short is Fred Durst. His performance is definitely not as cheeky and not as charming as it is on Significant Other. It definitely feels a bit more forced and a bit more like, hey, look at me, you know, I'm Fred Durst, I'm on top of the world, man, keep rolling. Like, it kind of feels like on this album, a lot of the time it just kind of feels like Fred is like that dad that's trying really hard to be cool and just coming off just really tacky. Yeah, it's definitely not as charismatic, but it's not a bad album by any means, in my opinion. Does it deserve to be the fastest selling rock album? But definitely not. But, you know, such is life. Things go on, and I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But I think I'll put it in B. I'm tempted to put it in C, but and also, just because I put that album in B doesn't mean that, like, I think this is a better album than 1,000 Suns or anything like that. I think 1,000 Suns is a better album than, like, any of these records. But if we're ranking purely on the quality of Limp Bizkit, it's B tier for them. But in the grand scheme of things, I would say a C tier. But, you know, it has what I would want from a Limp Bizkit album, which is some, corny lyrics, some good instrumentation. So, you know, they gave me what I expected. You know, they delivered what I wanted, and that's what matters. But now we get into results may vary, and results definitely did vary on this album, because This is their worst album. No doubt. This is not a good album by any means. Even like the lead single on this album, "Eat You Alive," is a really kind of creepy, like, stalker song about Fred, like, wanting to fuck this girl that he just met. And it's like, dude, like, back the fuck up. Like, it's a pretty nasty. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any E's, so I'm just going to put F. It's a pretty nasty song. And not only that, Wes Borland isn't even on this album. It's Mike Smith from Snot. The cover of Behind Blue Eyes is horrible. And there are just like no memorable songs on this album. Even the songs that are memorable are memorable for all the wrong reasons. This is not a good album by any means. F tier, no doubt. But after that, Limp Bizkit, they did one other EP that I mentioned, The Unquestionable Truth. If that was on this, if there was an E tier, I'd probably put it in E tier. But I'm not even going to bother. But then they took a bit of a hiatus, and then they came back in like 2009. And then 2 years later, they delivered Gold Cobra. This was like their big comeback album. And honestly, I think it's okay. It's an okay album. It's not bad, but it's not good either. Like, it has what I would expect from Limp Bizkit, which is some, pretty good instrumentation, some cheesy lyrics, some new metal cheese sprinkled in. It's what I like from Limp Bizkit. There actually are some songs that I really dig on this album. Like the title track is great. Shark Attack is a very fun song. I think my favorite track on this album is Why Try, because he's got this one in Why Try, he's got this one line that goes like, "Uno, dos, tres in your face." And I just think that's really corny, but also a really banging line, in my opinion. I really like that line. But other than that, I think a lot of the other songs on this album are just kind of forgettable. Like, none of them are really horrible to listen to, but it's just kind of a forgettable album for them. So I'm just going to put that in D tier. But anyway, and then we have their latest record. I like this album, and what I really liked about it was that Limp Bizkit are pretty much completely self-aware at this point. They're aware of the fact that, they're a meme, and that, people think they suck, and they're pretty much just kind of hamming it up. Like, okay, well, if this is what people think of us, that's fine. So let's kind of give them what they want. Let's ham it up. Let's just have fun. And you get a lot of songs like that on this. Dirty Rotten Biscuit, Dad Vibes, Turn It Up Bitch. I think the song Barnacle's really good. I like the song Love the Hate, because kind of a good commentary on just like how the band feels about being one of, if not the most hated rock band on the planet. I don't know, there's some other cool ones. Snacky Poo is kind of a really corny song even by Limp Bizkit standards, but at the end of it, it does have kind of a funny spoken word interlude where like Fred is pretending to be some interviewer and is like interviewing Wes over the phone. It's like, "Wes Borland, I understand your favorite bands are like Ween and like Godspeed You Black Emperor, and your favorite food is like Mexican and Thai food." And Wes just kind of like, yeah. Like, I thought that was pretty funny, and not just because it was corny. I actually kind of genuinely thought that was funny. There's not many times on a Limp Bizkit album where I can actually say the comedy falls. Oh, hold on. Okay. Sorry about that. I thought it was an emergency from one of my family members. But anyway, yeah, no, I thought that was pretty funny, actually. But this album definitely does still have its problems. There are some tracks that just aren't very good. But I think that this is definitely a worthy album in Limp Bizkit's discography. So, you know what I'm going to do? I want to do this. I'm going to put this in B tier, and I'm going to put $3 bills in C tier. I'm going to do that. Because because I think $3 Bills, it's a good album, but it dips pretty hard in the middle. And I think that at least I find myself wanting to listen to Still Sucks in full a bit more. Also, Still Sucks is a pretty short album, and it definitely didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome. So that's pretty much how I would rank Limp Bizkit. There's really no S tier albums, so I'm just gonna kind of delete that. I'd say that at their best, they're about they've made at least one A tier album, in my opinion. But now let's go to Metallica. Oh, okay, there we go. Go to template, reset. Okay, there we go. All right, Metallica, one of my all-time favorite bands. I'd definitely say they're in like my top 10, top 15 favorite bands, I'd say. Maybe not my top 10. Not in my top 10. Not my top 5, though. I think they used to be, but they kind of got overdone once I discovered Iron Maiden was the thing. But I might do Iron Maiden too, but I want to do Green Day first before we start doing more rankings. But anyway, Metallica. There's not really much I can say about them that hasn't already been said. They haven't had the most smooth career in all of music. They definitely had their ups and downs and some rocky roads, but I feel that Metallica as a band still to this day has been able to at least put out some music, that has never bored me, has never made me say, this wasn't worth my time, except for one, which we'll get into, I think we all know. But I think that Metallica at the very least has always delivered an album that I felt was like, yeah, this was worthy of my time at the very least. And not only that, I think every Metallica record, it's very fun to kind of pick apart and see what could have been done better, or why this was so good that it couldn't possibly be better. So anyway, we're going to start with their first album, which is Kill 'Em All. I love this album. Such a good album. Kill 'Em All, it might actually be a personal favorite of mine. It's not my all-time favorite Metallica record, but this is such a good album. Freaking The Four Horsemen, Jump in the Fire, Hit the Lights, Metal Militia, Seek and Destroy. Even Cliff's bass solo on this album, Anesthesia. Kill 'Em All, such a good album. However, I don't think I'll be putting in an S tier, though. And the only reason for that is the production is pretty rough. And that's not to say that, like, the production on Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets is also a bit... Oh, yeah, Whiplash. Forgot to mention that. I love Whiplash. I think my favorite version of that song is the one they played in Seattle on the Injustice for All tour. But, there's some amazing stuff on this album. It's so good. But, it has kind of two problems that I think kind of keep it from being S tier. First of all, the production is definitely not very... It's good. It's just pretty raw and a little rough. And I know that Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets have some pretty rough production as well to an extent. But this is definitely like one of those albums where it's like Metallica has everything going for them, that, they have nothing to lose, but they still have to find their footing. They're still in their early stages, and they definitely gotta figure out like what really identifies them, outside of every other thrash metal band at this time, because they're definitely kind of wearing a lot of influences on this album. You can hear a lot of songs that are just straight up feel like they're not ripping off, but straight up just kind of borrowing from like Motorhead and Diamond Head and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Sabbath. You can definitely hear a lot of the influence seeping through. So this is a great album, but definitely an amazing starting point for the band. But they definitely, I think, had to find their footing. But I'll put this in A tier, at the very least. A tier. I think that's a good one. Yes, we already said rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Now, next album, Ride the Lightning. Fantastic album. This is where their production was starting to sound a bit better. Cliff's bass playing was already pretty tight on Kill 'Em All, but now it's gotten even better. I think Lars's drumming was definitely getting tighter on this album. James's voice was definitely sounding more menacing on a lot of these tracks. They were definitely really doing a great job finding their footing on this album. I think this was definitely, and only on their second album, really finding an identity for themselves. I mean, every song of this album is just so good. Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, From Who the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, which in my opinion is like my all-time favorite Metallica song. Trapped Under Ice, Creeping Death, Call of Cthulhu. I'd say the only song in this album that is a bit of a blemish is Escape. But even then, I do not think that song is a bad song by any means. I think it's a good song. I think that it's really the only like song where it's like, yeah, it's just kind of there. It's a filler song. You know what I mean? It's one of those things like Monty P. Moneybanks just kind of looking at this thing and noticing the Squidward's nose, just kind of being like, hello, what's this? This is the only flaw. Yeah, I know. How did they not play Trapped Under Ice when they played Antarctica? That's bullshit. But anyway, yeah. Ride the Lightning, fantastic album. I'm putting that in S tier, no doubt. S tier album. Now, Master of Puppets. I don't think there's really much I could say about this one that I didn't say about Ride the Lightning. However, what Master of Puppets has over Ride the Lightning is definitely the songwriting was getting so much better. I mean, for a band like Metallica to write songs like Master of Puppets and like Disposable Heroes and like Damage Incorporated, like to write songs as grandiose as those and be able to really do a fantastic job of keeping the listener's attention was definitely not an easy feat for such a young band in such a, at the time, young genre. I mean, thrash metal as a genre hadn't really existed for very long. And yeah, I mean, I think every single person, all the personnel on this album, Kirk Hammett, this has his best guitar solos to date. I think Lars's drumming is the best it's ever been on this album. James sounds the tightest he's ever been. Cliff, and unfortunately, after this would be the final album he would ever appear on before his untimely death. What if this had to be the last one? I don't think there'd be a better album for him to go out with. And just every single album. There's not a single album that I think feels misplaced. Orion is a fantastic instrumental track. Yeah, there's no bad songs on this album. Battery, Master of Puppets, Things There Should Not Be, Welcome Home Sanitarium, Disposable Heroes, Leper Messiah, Orion, Damage Incorporated. It's like every song is so good. I think putting this in S tier doesn't even do it justice. They'd have to just be, you know what? Add row above. You want to make it pink for no reason. Oh, no, wait. Oh, that's S tier. All right. Wait, that was supposed to go... Yeah. I'm going to make this pink. I was going to say... Hold on. Master of Puppets. Because I don't think being an S tier is worthy enough, because if Ride the Lightning is an S tier album, Master of Puppets is a God tier album, in my opinion. A God tier. So actually, no, I'm going to say that. God tier. Yeah, God tier album. Absolutely. Just be prepared, though, if there's any Metallica fans in there, prepared for some hot takes, because there's going to be a lot of them in this ranking. And my first hot take is going to be their follow-up to Master of Puppets, Injustice for All. A lot of people are going to hate me for saying this. But before you do, I like this album. I do. I actually do like this album. However, I think it's, in my opinion, their most overrated album. And yeah, you're all probably saying like, what? You think it's the most overrated? It's like, what about the Black Album? Well, I'm going to get to that. But Yeah, the production sucks. The production sucks on Injustice for All. You cannot hear the bass. And that's really sad because Jason Newsted actually is a pretty awesome bassist. And yeah, you cannot hear his bass for, like, to save his life on this album. I feel like also this album really overstays its welcome. Some of the songs I really don't think had to be this long, especially with the production value on this album. Definitely overstays its welcome. But with that being said, there are still some really banger songs on this album. Like, the songwriting is still there. Like, the songwriting is still very good by Metallica standards. Yeah, it's yeah, it's still. I'm sorry, I'm like starting to get cold and my throat's getting dry. So give me a second. It's still a pretty fantastic album in the grand scheme of things, despite its overarching flaws. I mean, Blackened is a great opening song. The title track is great. And of course, there's One. One is probably my second favorite Metallica song. Just One is fantastic. Like, there's no beating around the bush. Like, I think if One wasn't on this album, I would probably rank it significantly lower than what I'm going to place it. But also, To Live Is to Die is a very how can I forget Harvester of Sorrow, great song. To Live Is to Die is also a very touching tribute to Cliff. But overall, I feel like some of the problems, I feel like it's one of those albums that, depending on the day, I can look past its production flaws and kind of just enjoy it for what it is. But there are some days where I just can't, and I'm just like, oh, how did they ever get away with this? But overall, I got to put it in B tier. I think Injustice for All is a B tier album, in my opinion. Now, another big hot take. If Injustice for All is their most overrated album, in my opinion, I would say the Black Album is their most overhated album. It's, their most overplayed and their most, their best-selling album to date. I don't think anyone could deny that, I think we're all kind of sick of hearing Enter Sandman and Sad But True and Nothing Else Matters and Unforgiven on the radio. Because that's literally all radio plays in terms of Metallica songs, other than maybe a few Load and Reload era stuff. Like, FM radio, like, barely plays, like, anything from, like, the first 4 albums, aside from, like, One, Master of Puppets, and, like, I think I've only heard, like, Creeping Death or, like, For Whom the Bell Tolls on FM radio, like, twice in my whole life. Oh my god, temperature control. But with that being said, I think because it's such an overplayed album, and people, I think, sometimes get so sick of hearing those songs on the radio so often, especially for hardcore Metallica fans, it kind of hides the fact that this is a pretty awesome album. Like, Enter Sandman is a banger. Sad But True, a banger. Unforgiven, banger. Nothing Else Matters, banger. I think that there are so many good songs on this album. Holier Than Thou, banger. Wherever I May Roam, banger. A Wolf and Man, banger. Through the Never, banger. I love all these songs. I think all the songs on this album are killer. It definitely has some of their tightest production to date, which is actually kind of weird to say considering that Bob Rock produced this album and he also produced Saint Anger, which is definitely their worst produced album. But yeah, I think that also that's like overplaying Time of Your Life by Green Day also really killed that song, because I re-listened to it recently and I'm like, no, this is a good song. It's a great ballad. But like, I never want to hear it because I've heard it a million times. That's kind of how I feel about a lot of the songs on this album. But I feel like, here's my suggestion. If you really want to enjoy this album, stop listening to FM radio. Just stop listening to radio in general. Like, even like XM radio, like Turbo and like Ozzy's Boneyard. They like only play like songs off of this album. Actually, no, Ozzy's Boneyard will play a lot of stuff from like Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and stuff like that. So their picks for Metallica songs are definitely a lot better than Turbo. But I would say, yeah, just don't listen to radio for like a few months and then go back to this album and you'll see it's a lot better than a lot of people say it is. So overall, I got to put the Black Album in A tier. I think it's an A tier album. Awesome album. Not their best and not a perfect album by any means, but I do like the Black Album. I think it is a good, might even go as far as to say it's a great album. I love the Black Album. I think it's a good album. I love it. I don't love it as much as Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All, and Master of Puppets, but I dig it. It's a good album. But now we're getting into the part of Metallica's discography with albums I'm not so fond of. And we're going to talk about 2 records back to back. I'm going to be ranking them differently because I think that they each have their own strengths and weaknesses. That, of course, could be Load and Reload. Oh, boy. So this was if Minutes to Midnight is to what, like if Minutes to Midnight is to what it is to Linkin Park's career, Load and Reload is basically what it is to Metallica's career in the same vein. I think after they found so much commercial success with the Black Album and kind of realized that they had this knack for being able to kind of turn thrash metal and heavy metal into like pop tunes on the radio, I think they started to get a little too big for their britches. And they also felt like, you know, I think they almost forgot what age they were too with this album. Like they cut their hair and they're like, yeah, we're old and burnt out now. And it's like, guys, you're like only in your 30s or like late 20s at this point in time. It's not time for a midlife crisis yet, but yeah, they really felt the need to like put a lot of influence from like Alice in Chains and Pantera and like country music and like just a weird fusion of genres on these albums. But even so, I think that there were some moments where there's a lot of shining moments on these albums. I don't think every song on this album is just objectively just like a shitty dad rock song. I don't think that at all. I mean, let's talk about Load first. That's got some great songs. Ain't My Bitch. Great opening track. I like the song House That Jack Built in 2x4, I think are decent songs. And then we get some really good songs with Until It Sleeps, King Nothing, and Hero of the Day. I think all of those songs are pretty awesome, especially King Nothing. That is like one of my all-time favorite songs from them, no doubt. But yeah, it's but even like Load alone is a very bloated album, and then having a double album like Reload to complement it really overblows it. Like the Load and Reload duology is such a overbloated, like very hit or miss couple of albums. And it's especially prevalent on Reload. Like, it starts off incredibly strong with, give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. You know, that is what, Fuel is also one of my all-time favorite Metallica songs. That's actually in my top 5 favorite Metallica songs. I love Fuel. I think that's a fantastic song. But then it goes into like Memory Remains and Devil's Dance and Unforgiven 2. And it's like, okay, so it's still good. And then the whole album just takes a nosedive. Like the whole like middle portion of this album is like very dry, very like overstaying its welcome, pretty boring. It starts to pick up a bit more towards the end. I like the song Low Man's Lyric. I think that that's a pretty good ballad for Metallica. However, I felt like it should have been the closing track. I feel like Fixer and Attitude should have just been omitted from the album entirely. I don't think, excuse me. I don't think Fixer's like a horrible song by any means, but it's like why did this have to be here? It's like Low Man's lyric, I think, was kind of a good song, would have been a very good song to end the album on. Yeah, it just, again, Reload is just, it really overstays its welcome, and I don't think it needed to do that. I think, honestly, as they stand, they're not fantastic albums by any means. They're incredibly flawed. Definitely feel like they definitely feel like that one guy who you want to tell to go on a diet, but like, oh yeah, it's okay, Awesome Face. To me, Load and Reload are like those two guys in your friend group who are like really overweight, and like, you know, you want to tell them, hey, listen, I'm concerned about your health. I think maybe you should consider a diet. Like, not to, because I don't want to say you're fat, but I'm concerned about you, man. That's how it kind of feels like to approach Metallica with this. It's like, hey, guys, you know, you really don't have to do this. I think you should cut out a lot of the fluff here. Like, I think you should kind of maybe just do one album instead of two albums. Because I think if you took the best moments from both of these albums and put them into one, you'd have a really good album on your hands. At least, in my opinion, I think if you took the best cuts from Load and Reload and combined them into one, you'd have at least a B tier album at the very least. Maybe even an A tier album, if I'm being honest. Like, an album with Fuel and King Nothing on the same record, I think, is an A tier, like, A tier worthy. But as they stand, I gotta rank them as is. Also, sorry, I'm also just making sure that these aren't emergency calls, because I'm just gonna tell my partner I'm on stream. Sorry about that. I'm just making sure everything's okay. Definitely there's going to be a bit of a similar take with the Green Day Uno Dos Tres trilogy, but that'll be a little bit different. So Load, I'm going to put in C tier, and Reload is going to go in D tier. I'm going to have to add a row because I think you all know what's coming next. And yeah. Let's see. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say about Saint Anger. No, actually, there are a couple of things I wanted to say because, listen, everyone and their mother has basically talked about everything that is wrong with this album. Yeah, the snare alone is the worst aspect of this album. Like, I could forgive, like, the lackluster songwriting and the lack of guitar solos if it wasn't for the snare, man. The snare tone on this album makes it virtually unlistenable. Oh, it's so bad. So bad. Yeah. Saint Anger is an absolutely atrocious record. It is in my opinion, a 0 out of 10. Complete 0 out of 10. Which is sad because I want to take this time to actually talk about some of the more positive things about this album. For one thing, there are some decent riffs on this album. I think there are some decent like one-liners on this album, like "My lifestyle determines my death style." Like, I think that's actually a pretty good line. But all of it gets lost in translation because the production is complete shit. James's vocal style is completely horse shit. It's all shit. It's just a shit album. And if I say shit one more time, I'm going to get shit and demonetized. You shit. It's shit. I hope I don't get demonetized for that. But anyway. Yeah, this album is Sucker Suckin' McSuckinton. It is poo-poo duty caca. And, yeah. They don't even have an established bass player on this album either. Bob Rock had to play bass because Jason Newsted left, and they didn't even have a bass player. So this album is a complete train wreck, and I think we should all forget that it even exists. I think that'd be a good thing. We should all just pretend that Saint Anger never happened. However, if you do want to actually, hold on a sec. I just want to, if you do actually want to listen to Saint Anger and subject yourself to this, do yourself a favor. Do not listen to the original Metallica version. I'm going to give you a version that you can listen to that will make this album at least listenable. It still has tons of problems, like, at the end of the day, but where is it? It's a fan re-recording. Is it still on? Did it get taken down? I guess it might have gotten taken down. Shit. Hold on. Sorry about that. But basically, it was done by these gentlemen here. I forget their names. Oh, here it is. It's Daryl Gardner and David Cox, Saint Anger. It's these two gentlemen basically re-record and restructure Saint Anger from the ground up. They even cut out some of the fluff and, round out the track listing to about like an hour. The runtime to about an hour. And the snare is fixed. The production is like so much better. They do re-record the vocals, so it's not James Hetfield's vocals, but it's infinitely more listenable. So if you do want to listen to this album, listen to this version. So like I said, it's Daryl Gardner and David Cox, Saint Anger 2015. It's a re-recording of the album. Definitely would recommend that. Now, before we continue any further, my throat is getting very dry from talking. I need to go get a drink. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I had to go get some water. Yeah. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, I got this shirt recently. So it's a Wiggles, it's a original lineup Wiggles shirt. It's like the Ramones. But the best part is, I got this online. It was like exclusive to like a show they did in Australia, actually. It was at the Sparks Arena in 2022. So I found this on like Etsy. Someone was selling it. And on the back it says, "Wake the F up, Jeff." So I thought that was pretty cool. So I had to get that. Pretty awesome shirt. Anyway, let's go back to the Metallica rankings. So with Saint Anger, there was no possible way they could do an album as bad as that. Saint Anger is so bad. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. So let's talk about an okay album in Metallica's discography. And that would be Death Magnetic. Death Magnetic's a good album, in my opinion. I think some of the songwriting definitely felt like a return to form for Metallica, with them kind of going back to maybe trying to do some more thrash metal sounds. But it definitely does not feel like old Metallica, and it doesn't need to, But it definitely feels like something a little bit more interesting than what they were doing on like Saint Anger and Load and Reload. It doesn't really feel like a midlife crisis though, which is good. I do dig a lot of the songs on this album, like That Was Just Your Life was a great album. Album. I am losing. I meant to say song. My bad. Yeah, so That Was Just Your Life. Day That Never Comes, I think, is a pretty cool... wait, have you seen on Discord that I found from you? Oh, no. Awesome Face, if you can do me a favor, send that to me in direct message. I haven't had a chance to look at my Discord server lately. Yeah, Day That Never Comes is great. I really like the Unforgiven 3 also, although I think my favorite version of... Excuse me. I really don't I think my favorite version of Unforgiven 3 comes from the S&M 2 album. That's probably my favorite version of that song. Yeah, Suicide and Redemption I don't think was their worst song. I think it's a pretty good instrumental track. And I think having the album close with My Apocalypse is also a pretty good one. Cyanide, also a pretty good song. I love the song All Nightmare Long. However, I will admit some of the guitar work on that song is a bit lazy. But it's still a very memorable song, and it's, you know, it's got a, 'cause he hunt you down with a mercy, hunt you down all nightmare long. Like, that's a pretty banging chorus, in my opinion. I'm honestly not really a big fan of Loudwire in all honesty. But even with all of that said, there is a pretty big problem with this album, and that is the production. It's very compressed. And much like Injustice for All, you can like barely hear the bass. It's like almost non-existent. However, it is a little bit, there is a saving grace with this, because around the time that this album was released, Metallica had their own Guitar Hero game. There was Metallica Guitar Hero. So I would say if you wanted to listen to this album, I would recommend that mix. Look up the Guitar Hero mix of Metallica. It's Death Magnetic. You can actually hear the bass. The production and the mixing is like infinitely better than the retail version. And yeah, I would say as it stands as the retail version, I would say Death Magnetic is at least a C tier album. I was like tempted to put it in D tier because the production is so shit on the retail version, but the songwriting is actually so good that I'm willing to kind of forgive it. So I'm going to put it in C tier. But if the retail version was like how it's mixed in the Guitar Hero version, it would be in B tier in my opinion. But as it stands, it's a C tier album. Now, let's go to the next one. Hardwired to Self-Destruct. So I became a Metallica fan a little late. They were like my introduction to heavy metal. I became a metalhead pretty late. My introduction to metal kind of started in 2014 when my uncle gave me his record collection. Like, I knew of some metal songs and some metal tracks, but I wasn't really super into metal as a genre until then. So yeah, Hardwired, I think, is definitely one of their most underrated and underappreciated albums. However, it does have a little bit of a problem, considering it is a double album. And what's interesting is that the album that followed this one up, 72 Seasons, is pretty much the exact same length, has the exact same amount of tracks, but it wasn't split up into two records, which doesn't really make any sense. I don't think that there was any necessary reason to split up Hardwired into two albums. And if anything, I think there were some songs that definitely should have been cut out. Like Dream No More, I think, is like probably one of their most boring songs they've ever written. Man Unkind also was kind of a boring song. Am I Savage, I think, like Am I Savage and like Murder One could have at least been like bonus tracks. But then there are there are plenty of great cuts on this album. Like the opening song Hardwired is great. Oh, sorry. I want to answer this question. Probably a random question, but have you heard about the drama recently about Napkin Nate? He was a YouTuber who got arrested and his friend is weird. Yeah, no, I don't know who Napkin Nate is, unfortunately. Sorry. But yeah, and then there's plenty of amazing cuts on this album. The opening track, Hardwired, is awesome. Atlas Rise, great song. I like the song Now That We're Dead, also really, really good, kind of slower track for them. Moth into Flame, good song. I think my favorite song on this album has to be my favorite song on this album, Confusion, definitely. I love that song. And also, going back to S&M 2, there's a really great rendition of that song on that album. Do I like nu metal? Yes and no. Like, I'm very picky with nu metal. But I mean, we just did a Linkin Park tier list, so that could kind of tell you that I definitely, I think nu metal is okay as a genre. But I'm very selective with the bands. And I think honestly, the bands that I do like aren't even really nu metal. Where would I put Lulu on this? Fuck this album, definitely. I would put Lulu right next to Saint Anger. Lulu was not a good album either. But I don't count that one because that was not really an album. That was a collab between them and Lou Reed. Yeah, I did not like Lulu. Lulu's not a good album. But yeah, and then of course, so yeah, Confusion I think is probably my favorite. My favorite song on this album. And then of course there's the awesome Spit Out the Bone, which is like, you know, probably one of the heaviest songs they've written in years, and definitely I think one of the best songs to end an album with. So yeah, I really dug Hardwired to Self-Destruct. It's a little bloated, and admittedly I do find myself skipping a lot of tracks. But as it stands, I'll put it in B tier. I think it's a good B tier album. It's a bit overloaded, but it's good. It's a good album. So it's like with each of these, it's like, fuck this album. This is like an like record. This is like okay. This is a good album. A is like a great album. S is like an amazing record. And then, you know, God tier is like, oh! you know what I mean? But anyway, last album in Metallica's current discography, and that would be 72 Seasons. I wasn't super crazy about this album. I feel like it's way too long, and like it has that, like, which is pretty much the same problem that I had with Hardwired, but even then it really doesn't have a lot of the same amount of memorable tracks. Like, at least Hardwired had a lot more memorable songs and some serious bangers. 72 Seasons really doesn't have that. And like, there's some fast songs, but not really any like what I would classify as thrashy tracks. Some of the faster songs just kind of feel like they're kind of just paying tribute to like Motorhead and like Judas Priest and like maybe even like Exciter to an extent. Not even Exciter. That's not really a good example, but like, to me, when I first heard Lux Eterna, that just sounded like a mid-tier Motorhead song, in my opinion. I do like the song Screaming Suicide, though. I thought that was a good song. But there are some of my least favorite Metallica songs on this. Like You Must Burn. Oh, that is a horrible track. I fucking hate that song. Yeah, You Must Burn, Sleep. What else? Chasing Light is also not a very good song. Yeah, Exciter is definitely a very underrated speed metal band. But yeah, honestly, 72 Seasons, it's kind of like Metallica just kind of being like, yeah, Hardwired works so well, let's just do it again, but worse. That's just kind of how I felt with this. I don't really have much else to say beyond that. D tier. Yeah, I wasn't crazy about 72 Seasons. It was meh. It was a meh album. So yeah, that's how I'd rank Metallica's discography. Yeah, that's really all I have to say. That's Metallica's discography. At least that's how I would rank it, in my opinion. My least favorite song from Metallica, anything off of Saint Anger. Like, no doubt. Literally any song off of Saint Anger is just my least favorite song from them. Specifically, I think the song like Invisible Kid really gets on my nerves. Like, that song specifically, just like the snare on that song particularly, because it just constantly goes dong 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 dong. That fucking that, like, just constantly hearing the constant banging of the snare on Invisible Kid, like, oh, so bad. But yeah. So I'm gonna get the next one queued up. We're gonna do Green Day next. Another one of my favorite bands. Green Day, I'd actually go as far to say are probably in my top five favorites. Not my favorite punk band of all time. That would have to go to Dead Kennedys, no doubt. Dead Kennedys are my all-time favorite punk band. And there are some other bands I like a little bit more than Green Day. Than just... hold on. I'm trying to find... Where's the reset button? There we go. Yeah, Green Day is a pretty great band, and yeah, definitely not my all-time favorite punk band, but they're up there. And yes, I do consider Green Day a punk band. For all you elitists, you can go fuck yourself. Yeah, I've never seen the Dead Kennedys current lineup. I don't really want to, per se, because I don't know. It's just not the same without Jello, in my opinion. I do want to see Jello's solo project live eventually, though. I would really love that. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, I also did see Green Day recently on their most recent tour, and they played Dookie and American Indian in its entirety. So that was pretty awesome. I was very happy to catch that. Hold on. But anyway, let's go to the Green Day ranking. No, I don't think I've listened to Prodigy or Pendulum. No, I don't think so. I'm sorry. Okay, so this list also has like their side projects like The Network and Foxborough Hot Tubs, and like even like Shenanigans or B-side, but I'm only going to be ranking I'm only going to be ranking their studio albums. So with that, let's start with their first album, which would be 39 Smooth, also known as 1039 Smooth Slappy Hours, which is the reissue's name, because the reissue also included the 1000 Hours and Slappy EPs. And in all honesty, I kind of prefer those EPs over the album. Like my favorite songs from this era of Green Day pretty much come from like exclusively from the Slappy EP, like Paper Lanterns and 409 and Your Coffee Maker are like two of my like favorite Green Day songs, and they're not even on this album, or at least the original version of this album. But yeah, it's an okay album. It's not great. But you can definitely hear that there are some good ideas, and definitely you can hear the early startings of what Green Day would ultimately become. Trey Cool is not on this album. It's their original drummer, John Kiffmeyer. He's serviceable. Trey Cool is just infinitely a better drummer. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But there are some good songs on this album still, like At the Library, Going to Pasalacqua. I think that's how you pronounce that. I probably just butchered that. This isn't an album that you should just completely skip. Oh shit. I was like trying to move something. This is not an album that you should completely skip. Like, there are still some really good songs on this album, but as a pop punk band, Green Day's sound is really more serviced by tighter production and This album and Kerplunk have much more rough production by comparison, and it really just doesn't work for Green Day's sound. So I'm gonna put 39 Smooth in C tier. But Kerplunk, I'm almost also tempted to put it in C tier. However, the songwriting is infinitely better than 39 Smooth. Kerplunk also has, even though the production is very rough and it's not very good, there's still some amazing songs on this album. Like 2000 Light Years Away. It also had the original version of Welcome to Paradise, which I think objectively the the Dookie version is obviously better, but I don't know. The original version is still charming in its own way. Christy Road, also a great song. Dominated Love Slave is also a very cheeky, kind of underrated country parody song. That's a fun song. Also, Trey Cool is on the vocals on that song instead of Billy Joe, which is pretty funny. Yeah, and there's some other great songs, like One of My Lies is like one of my all-time favorite Green Day songs, and Who Wrote Holden Caulfield. Like, there's some great stuff on this album. Definitely do not skip on this. As I said, I'm tempted to put it in C tier, but I think I'm going to put it in B tier because if it wasn't for how amazing some of the songs were written, it would be in C tier. But as it stands, I think it's a B tier album. Now, then, of course, after that comes the band's breakout album, Dookie. Dookie is like one of my all-time favorite records. That is in like my top 10 favorites, like easy top 10 favorite album. And yeah, I don't think there's really much I can say about Dookie that hasn't already been said. Obviously, this came out like 5 years before I was born. I was born in 99 and this came out in like 94. But I could obviously see that for the time, especially with like grunge and alternative rock really dominating the radio waves, I think that bringing a band like Green Day to the mainstream definitely kind of broke up the monotony, and I think it gave people a lot, like an alternative to that sound, and maybe something a little bit more fun and poppy to listen to, but also has this, still has that punk edge. And of course, every single song on Dookie is a banger. Even some of the maybe lesser known songs are still great. One of my personal favorites being Coming Clean, which of course is a very special song to me because it was definitely, I would say, the song that helped me kind of come out as a bisexual, pansexual man. And I don't think without this record, I might not have had the courage to ever really express, myself as a person. And I think that that's a very special thing. But other than that, I mean, Burnout, Longview, Welcome to Paradise, Basket Case, She, When I Come Around. I mean, so many amazing singles on this album. And as I said, I love all the deep cuts on this one too. Having a Blast is a very underrated track in my opinion. I still bump that one pretty regularly. I'm actually kind of disappointed they never play it live, other than King for a Day is also like a very King for a Day, I'd say, is a drag queen or even a trans anthem. Even if Billy Joe isn't a trans woman or anything like that, I'd say there's still like a lot of trans people that I know really love the song King for a Day, just because of the implications of it. King for a Day is a great song, but we'll get to Nimrod when we get to it. But I also love the song Meania Sleepus. I think that's like one of the only songs that Mike Dirnt wrote on this record, and I think that's a pretty underappreciated album. And again, I was very fortunate to hear those songs live because they never play some of these songs unless they have to do Dookie in its entirety. So I was very fortunate to hear that. And I also love when I saw it, they played the hidden track all by myself, but they did an orchestral version. And Trey came out with like this leopard skinned robe and was like prancing around. It was so funny. It was great. That had to have been one of the best concert experiences of my life. Just such an amazing night. So, of course, Dookie, gotta put it in S tier. Absolutely. Next one, Insomniac. I love this album. I think this is a great album. Only thing is, it is very rushed. I don't think anyone could deny that. This was only made a year after Dookie, and I think they were definitely pressured by their record label to, put out another album because they really didn't know how long their popularity would really last. So, but even then, you still got some really great powerful like punk songs. Like this I think is probably their most punk album to date. Like if every other one of their albums is either just a pop punk, pop rock, or just a straight up pop record, I think that I would say that I would say Insomniac is probably their most punk feeling album. Yeah, William Shaw, you definitely hit the nail on the head in what I was going to say. Definitely their most punk feeling record. But even then, it still has some flaws. Brain Stew, it's a good song, but like, I feel like it's only on the record because like, their record label was like, oh, you have to have like that big radio hit. And it just kind of feels like every other like alternative rock, like slow, grungy song that was out at the time, and doesn't really have its own identity. I mean, it's a fun song, and also it holds a special place in my heart because it's the first song I learned on guitar. But yeah, literally, like we're in sync right now, dude. I was literally just saying, it's Baby's first guitar riff. That was me. But even then, there's some great cuts on this album. The opening track. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the subscription, Soencha. Sorry, I'm also like, I have a very bad memory when it comes to song titles. So I also have like my iTunes page open. Like, so I'm like, oh yeah, this song is called that. You know what I mean? It's like, if you put the freaking song on, I'll know what it is. But like, God only knows if I know like what it's called. Obviously, I think with most of these I already know, but still, I need these for reference. Yes, I'm sorry about making the shirt. Yes, I do still want to make those shirts, but sorry, I was like sick for like the first half of August, and then I fell very behind with work. Once I get all of that situated, I'm hoping to at least get the shirts out by maybe this month or October. I'll make a formal announcement about it when I do make them, though. Don't worry. But yeah, there's some great songs on this record. I mean, the opening track is great. Stuck With Me, Geek Stink Breath. I think my personal favorite song in this album is definitely Stewart in the Avenue. I just really love that song. Walking Contradiction is also a great song. Yeah, I just really love this album. It's not perfect. But I think I gotta put it in B tier. I think that's a fair place to place it is B tier. It's a pretty, I'd say this is a good album. Maybe even a great one. But next is Nimrod. This one actually wasn't one of my favorites for a long time. It kind of took me a while for me to really get on board with this album. Like, I did like it. I've always liked it, but I don't think I really loved it until only like a year ago, because I re-listened to it and I'm like, yeah, this is actually a really good album. Yeah, there's some great songs on this album. I mean, the opening is great. Nice Guys Finished Last, Hitching a Ride. I also really like the song Scattered is very good. Oh, got another. Thank you. Hemington City? Yeah, I think Hemington City. Thank you. Oh yeah, Hemington City. Okay, thank you. I don't know about that, but maybe. But yeah, I think possibly my favorite song on the album is Platypus I Hate You, because I bump that song whenever I think about someone I hate, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to listen to that. Also, the song off of Shenanigans, Haha, You're Dead, I put that on too, if I want to think about somebody I hate. But, yeah, and of course, King for a Day. Yeah, Reject is also a good song. Yeah, like I said, Scattered, Redundant. There's some great songs on this song. There's some really good. Oh, hi, DM Productions. How you doing? I'm doing good, dude. But yeah, there's yeah, I'd say Nimrod's got some pretty great songs. I'm not honestly Take Back. That's probably my least favorite song in the album. Like, it's a good song, but I really don't like the Take Back. Like I feel like Billy Joe's vocals on that song were a bit corny, but yeah, Prosthetic Head, and of course, Time of Your Life is a really good song too. Overplayed, yes, but like I said with Metallica, stop listening to radio for like a few months and then go back and listen to that song, and you'll actually start to see it's yeah, I know about the Jimmy Gord thing. Please don't. Yeah, that's a bit of an inside. That's a throwback right there. Yeah, no, please don't. Please don't write a song about that. But anyway, but yeah, Time of Your Life. Stop listening to radio for about like a few months and then go back to listen to it, and you might actually like be like, yeah, this is actually a good song. It Time of Your Life in E flat sounds like a Stone Sour song. I should actually give that a shot sometime. But yeah, Nimrod, gonna put that, where's Nimrod? Oh, there's Nimrod. A tier album. Good, great, pretty great album. Pretty great. But yeah, so after that, after Nimrod, we got their next album, Warning. I like this album. I think it's pretty good. However, it's definitely a very different album for Green Day, because I think that they were a little like unsure of how to follow up Nimrod. And I think they were kind of more, I think they might have been a bit worried about like, you know, staying within the limelight. So I think maybe the band, or maybe at least Billy Joe, felt like, yeah, I think they really felt like they had to like kind of cash in on some radio rock, like folk punk music, to kind of stay relevant, and in the process kind of, you know, everyone was just kind of like, you guys didn't need to do this, and they really didn't. But even then, I think that I think Warning still had some pretty banger tracks on it. The opening track's great. I love the song Castaway. I really like the song Misery. That's a very weird kind of like like carnival song, or like a circus song, and with kind of a interesting little story. I think Mike Dirnt wrote the lyrics, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Misery is a pretty underrated track from them. I like the song Deadbeat Holiday, Waiting. Minority, of course, I think is definitely the standout track, and that's the one song they definitely play the most live. And Minority, I think, is definitely in... yeah, I would say Misery is kind of like a precursor to My Chemical Romance. But, yeah, Minority is definitely, I think, in my top 10 favorite Green Day songs. That's a great song. Definitely an anthem for them. But as it stands, Warning, not a bad album by any means. But I think it's good. It's okay. But I'll put it in C tier. I'm going to put it in C. And then, of course, after that, we have American Idiot. I love American Idiot. I love it, love it, love it. This was my first introduction to Green Day. I'm sure most people who grew up in the 2000s, this was also like their introduction to Green Day as a band. Um, I still do really love this album. However, I personally will not say it's their best album. I think Dookie is still their best album, but uh, American Idiot is definitely an album that had to happen for Green Day because Warning was definite because Warning also kind of put the band in a rut creatively and also a little disillusioned with their fans. And I think they were even kind of considering like maybe we should just break up. And they said no. I think we still want to keep going. And yeah, so they decided, hey, let's do a rock opera, and I think they did a pretty great job with it. That's actually awesome that Holiday was your marching band song. But yeah, I really do like the story that's on American Idiot. I think it's a pretty cool, like it's a bit all over the place in the grand scheme of things, but it's pretty easy to understand if you kind of read into the liner notes of the album. And of course, there are some amazing albums on, yeah, the anti-Bush era. That's another thing about this album that I do want to get into because I think as a concept, I think as a rock opera with a story, it succeeds very well. However, as an anti-Bush album, it's serviceable and it does a good job. However, I think that there were other albums from the time that definitely kind of did this a bit better. And there were already some bands that precursed this album, like System of a Down and Rage Against the Machine, and some other bands that I think were kind of doing the anti-Bush criticism a little bit better, and even a lot of underground punk bands at the time I think were also doing a little bit doing a little bit better with the anti-Bush stuff. So I think like the politics on this album I think kind of get lost in translation just a smidge with also the concept story. But yeah, Chuck is also if you guys have not listened to Sum 41's Chuck, definitely check it out. Very underrated album. I'd say Chuck and Does This Look Infected are like my two favorite Sum 41 albums. I actually saw them play Does This Look Infected in its entirety once. That was awesome. But yeah, I mean, this is still a pretty great album. Even if it is politically charged and maybe doesn't feel as heavy with its political charge. Well, I don't want to say that because it definitely feels like that was a driving motivation behind this record is the anti-Bush politics. But again, I feel like some of it gets a little lost in translation. However, it does paint a very good picture on the song Holiday. Like that's a very explicitly like anti-war, anti-Bush song, and it does a fantastic job at it. Also, American Idiot does a great job at that, like the title track, I mean. And then, of course, I think there's a lot of great songs on here that do a great job kind of painting a good picture of youth alienation at the time. It definitely did a lot for me growing up in the 2000s, even before I was really going through puberty and like kind of like going through existential dread as a teenager. I think this album still really spoke to me as a young lad. And it definitely did a lot more for me when I got into middle school and high school. Especially the songs Jesus of Suburbia, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Wake Me Up When September Ends. Also the song Letter Bomb is also a banger to me. I love the songs Are We the Waiting and Give Me Novocaine. St. Jimmy's also a banger. I'd say, and of course, I think the album does also cap off pretty well with the two closing tracks. Yeah, I was about to say, I think the two like biggest flaws on the album are definitely She's a Rebel and Extraordinary Girl. Yeah, I honestly kind of think those were like just the two most probably the two weakest tracks on the album. They're not bad songs by any means, but I feel like they were a bit misplaced, especially when you compared them to the other tracks and how heavy they were with the subject matter. I feel like She's a Rebel and Extraordinary Girl were only there to kind of establish what's her name as a character in the story. But yeah, American Idiot, pretty awesome album. I'm gonna put that in A tier. I was gonna put it in S tier originally, but I think the more that I think about it, it's not a perfect album. So I think I'm just gonna be putting it in A tier. Still, very good album. I love American Idiot. It's a great album. But I'm not gonna lie, I feel like American Idiot's existence was like, I mean, Green Day are political to an extent. However, I feel like the political aspect of their music really didn't become a major factor until American Idiot. Like, there's stuff sprinkled around in their early records, of course, but I think most of their early records, the subject matter was more focused on, just alienated youth and, just the disillusion with, I talked about the Wiggle shirt earlier before you came here. I think a lot of their earlier stuff just had to do with disillusion with the punk scene because, they were essentially kicked out of the 924 Gilman Street punk scene. And there was definitely, I think, a lot of anger towards that. And you can hear that a lot on Dookie and especially Insomniac. And Platypus, I Hate You is actually specifically targeted towards, I think, one of the main brains behind the 924 Gilman Street, or at least a journalist who was like a big supporter of it, who kind of like screwed over pretty much Green Day's punk credibility. But yeah, I feel like with American Idiot, its existence kind of feels like a monkey's paw, because I feel like a big Green Day fan heard Warning, didn't like it, and then found the monkey's paw and was like, I wish Green Day would make a good album again. And what we got was arguably probably one of their best and most ambitious albums to date. But the trade-off for that is that we got one of their worst albums to date right after that. And that would be, I got to add some more rows because I don't think this is even worthy of being in D tier. This is I'm also doing another Fuck This album for this. I'm going to make that gray, and then I'm going to make this blue. 21st Century Breakdown. This album sucks. It's not good. There's only like 3 songs I actually like on this. No. There's only like 2 songs I like on this album, and that's like the first 2 songs. I think the title track is good, and I think Know Your Enemy is a decent radio song. Other than that, the rest of the album sucks. 21 Guns is one of their more overplayed and more annoying songs I've ever heard. It's literally just kind of like American Idiot, but like 10 times worse. It's boring. It's overloaded. It overstays its welcome. And its existence pretty much, American Idiot pretty much brought the existence of the Broadway show, but there are songs from this album in the American Idiot Broadway show. So I feel like if it wasn't for this album, because of this album's existence was the reason we got the shitty Broadway show. So I just kind of have some resentment towards this album. I kind of liked it as a kid, but in hindsight, I'm just like, no, this is, I don't like this album. E tier. It's not horrible, but it's not good either. I don't like this album. Now we're getting into a big hot take here. The Uno Dos Tres trilogy. I really don't think was the lowest point in the band's career. A lot of people say this was like, you know, their biggest low. Like this was like their worst albums. Like these were like nothing could be worse than this. And I don't really think that's the case. I think that Uno Dos Tre, like I said, like Load and Reload in my Metallica ranking, I'm going to rank them individually. They're not all going to go in the same tier because each one has its own problems. But I feel like, much like what I said about Load and Reload, if you were to take the best tracks from each of these albums and put them together on one album, I think you'd have a pretty great record. At least, in my opinion, a B tier album. You'd have a B tier Green Day album, no doubt. Because I feel like on the better moments on these records, Green Day definitely played to their strengths, doing some fun pop punk songs, and you know, just really, and also doing some good, you know, anthem and ballad tracks. But then there's also some like really tacky tracks all over these records. So first of all, on Uno starts like very strong, like Nuclear Family, Stay the Night, Carpe Diem, Let Yourself Go. Like all those songs are pretty great. But then it like kind of starts to drop off in the middle. Like Kill the DJ is like a really tacky, like bland song. Fell for You is also pretty bland. Loss of Control is okay at best. Troublemakers, I could pretty much say the same thing. But it does pick up towards the end. I think that the last 4 tracks on Uno are pretty great. Angel Blue, Sweet 16, Rusty James, and Oh Love. Oh Love, I think that has to be my favorite song in the record. I love Oh Love. I think that's a pretty great song. So I'm going to put... I don't know. I'm gonna put. I gotta think about that. C tier. I'll put it in C. Yeah, I was gonna say about Trey. What would you say is the most underrated track on that album? What's the worst track? Yeah, let me know what you think, William. I'm just curious to see which one it is, because I might actually agree with you if we're thinking the same thing. But now Dose. Dose is just straight up not a good album. A lot of what is on Dose just kind of feels like leftovers from their side project, Foxborough Hot Tubs. And even then, like, Foxborough Hot Tubs is like infinitely better than anything you'll find on anything you'll find on Dose, except for a few tracks, I'll say. Makeout Party. I know that sounds like a corny song. Definitely check it out. Makeout Party is one of the most underrated Green Day tracks, in my opinion. Yes, the subject matter is pretty corny. It's literally just about spinning the bottle, but the instrumentation and Billy's performance on that song are banging. I'd say that's probably my favorite song on that record is Makeout Party. Also, their song Amy is a very nice and touching, a very nice and touching tribute to the late Amy Winehouse. And yeah, I actually do like to listen to the song Amy from time to time. There are a couple of other like decent songs on this album, like Lazy Bones is like okay, Stray Heart is okay, Lady Cobra is okay. Like these are all just kind of okay songs. But then you get some really like embarrassing and like just really like bleh tracks like Fuck Time, like ugh. That is like one of the grossest songs they've ever put out. It makes me want to puke just thinking about it. Yeah, Dose is a very mixed bag of an album. E tier. Trey. I think honestly Trey is the most consistent and possibly the best out of all 3 of these albums. I don't think that there's a single album on Trey I disliked. There's definitely like William had said in the comments, "Dirty Rotten Bastards" is a fantastic song. Definitely one of their most underrated songs to date. But also then there's Drama Queen, which is like just a trash song. But other than that, Drama Queen is the only song on this album I could say is like the objectively bad song. Every other song on this album is pretty good. I mean, Brutal Love is a very nice kind of slow song. Missing You has one of my favorite I think it goes like, I searched the world, I lost my head, I even looked under the bed. Like, I just love that. Like, that's one of my favorite lines from any Green Day song. I just love the kind of tongue-in-cheek joke that they kind of threw in there, the looking under the bed. That's a really, I just love love that line so much. Yeah, Aerosmith, like pretty much all of their freaking songs are about like sex. But I feel like that formula worked for them for a while, but it definitely started to wear out its welcome when they started doing like Pink. Like Pink is like one of their worst songs. But yeah, I love Aerosmith. I'm not doing an Aerosmith ranking because I haven't listened to all of their albums, so I'm not prepared to do it. But maybe someday, I don't know. Maybe I'd like to do an Aerosmith ranking. I should do a Guns N' Roses ranking, actually. I think that'd be pretty cool. But anyway, Trey, I think it's a pretty consistent album. It's not perfect by any means, but I think Trey is a B tier album, in my opinion. Wow, Master of Zoroark. Yeah, no, Pink is a freaking terrible Aerosmith song. But anyway, moving on. We're not talking about Aerosmith. We're talking about Green Day, man. We're talking about Green Day. And the last three albums here, not really a ton to talk about, unfortunately. Although I do have one would have a lot to talk about, but I don't really want to exert any more energy towards because talking about it is like talking about Saint Anger. But anyway, we're not there yet. Also, I'm not putting Shenanigans on here because it's not an LP, but if I did, it would be C tier. And then all the side projects, like the Foxborough Hot Tub stuff would probably be like C to D tier. And I think this was like Billy Joe's I don't think I've ever heard that Long Shot album, and I haven't heard I think this was just Billy Joe's solo record. I haven't heard that either. The Network stuff is very good. If that was like part of the Green Day canon, this would be A tier and this one would be B tier. I'm not even kidding. Like these are great albums. Yeah. Next is Revolution Radio. I remember when this came out when I was in high school and really digging it, but I re-listened to it recently, and, you know, there's some good songs on this album. I still like the song Bang Bang. The title track is pretty fun. Ordinary World is okay. It just kind of sounds like a worse version of Time of Your Life. Say Goodbye is, like, okay. Still Breathing is okay. Like, I don't know. This song is just kind of an like it's okay album. I think at the time we were all just happy that Green Day wasn't forcing 3 albums down our throat, but that also kind of unfortunately kind of made us overlook a lot of the flaws with this album at the time. Yeah, I really don't have a ton to say about this. I'm putting Revolutionary Radio in D tier. Like, it's okay. It's not great. It's not good. It's kind of okay. And then do I really have to say anything? If you've heard this album, you know why it's bad. And the worst part about it, this is like I think their shortest album to date, and That's surprising to me because this album feels like it goes on for an eternity. It's so bad. I mean, look, they just even the cover art is trash. They just recycled the cover art from American Idiot. It's so lazy. This is their laziest album. We're just like, yeah, we're just gonna write a bunch of shitty, like, dad rock, radio rock, baseball stadium rock schlock, and we don't give a fuck. Like, that's basically all they said on this. Like, it's just like, we don't care. This album sucks. Is the production as bad as Saint Anger? No, but it is. This album is boring, cringy, and horrible. It's everything that you don't want in a rock album, and it's on this album. This album sucks. It's suck McSucky sucking. It's Mayor McCheese sucking fuckers. It fucking sucks. It sucking fucks. It's a piece of shit, and I don't like it. Yeah. So yeah, Father of All. It's bad. It's really bad. And then last, we're going to look, like I said, I'm not going to be ranking any of these other ones, but last in the Green Day canon, we have Saviors, their most recent. Yeah, it's Mayor McCheese, Cheesy, Cheese. Oh. Thank you for that, Suck Maz. I appreciate it. Yeah. It sucks. That's the best way to put it. But anyway, Saviors does not suck, but it's also not great. Or good, for that matter. I don't hate it, but I feel like we're really reaching that point where we just kind of have to accept that Green Day is like way past their prime. There are some like decent cuts on this one. I mean, I do like this. I do like the title, not the title track, the opening track, "The American Dream Is Killing Me" is a good song. Yeah, there is. Oh, you liked Corvette Summer? Oh, I'm sorry, dude. I mean, I'm not sorry. I'm actually glad you like it because at least somebody likes that album. I, for one, do not. When I have to admit, when Fantano like came out with his review of Saviors, I was like, yeah, I think we can all agree Corvette Summer was like the worst song in this record. But yeah, I did like "The American Dream Is Killing Me," "Look Mono Brains," "Bobby Socks," "One-Eyed Bastard." Like, the first 5 tracks on this record were all pretty good. But the middle was very boring and even kind of cringeworthy. But I think it did pick up towards the end. Like, the last, 4 tracks I think were all decent. But even then, I feel like this was overall kind of a watered down version of what they were kind of doing with American Idiot and even the Uno Dos Tres trilogy. I think it's a better album than Revolution Radio, but not by much. So I think overall it's okay. It's an okay album. So I would kind of want to put it in C tier, but even then, like Uno, Uno's best moments are infinitely better than Savior's best moments. So I think I'm gonna put Saviors in D tier. It's okay. It's an okay album. So that's Green Day. That's how I would rank Green Day. So before we continue any further, because I'm not sure what other band I want to do. Also, I don't know how much time I have left. Hold on. How long have I been streaming for? Hold on. I'm actually gonna shut off the display real quick. How long have I been going? I've been going for 2 hours at this point? Holy shit. I had no idea. Alright. Maybe we'll do one more. I think we'll do one more tier list and then I'll probably... No, I'm not doing Imagine Dragons. I hate Imagine Dragons. Every one of their albums is D to F tier at best. I fucking hate Imagine Dragons. Images you can hear. Um, yeah, so just to recap on everything we've done so far for anyone who kind of just joined the stream late. So we did the Linkin Park ranking first. I don't think there's really a D tier Linkin Park record. Maybe, honestly, I have a feeling From Zero will end up being D tier. I just have a feeling. Oh, okay, let's do Iron Maiden, yeah. Okay, yeah. I think that'll be the last one we'll do. Let's do Iron Maiden. That's a good one to do. No, we're not doing Nirvana. That'd be too short. Also, all of Nirvana's records are like A tier at best. Although I would say In Utero is like an S tier record. That's an S tier record in my opinion. Nevermind and Bleach, I think, are both A tier records. Yeah, I hate Imagine Dragons. Such an annoying band. Oh, I'm out of water. Whatever. Anyway. So, we're going to do an Iron Maiden tier list. That'll be the last tier list that we do. Yeah, I think maybe... Yeah, you know what? Next time I could do Foo Fighters and My Chem. I think that'd be a good one to do. I would like to talk about My Chemical Romance anyway. Okay, this is good because it's already got, like, all the... Wait, no. Wait, shit. Go to template. Oh! Fucked that up. That's okay. I'll just... Sorry, just, Okay, so we're gonna do Iron Maiden now. This will be our last tier list, and then I'll call it a day. Yeah, Iron Maiden, one of my favorite bands. You can't see it. Actually, let me see if I can show you. I have an Iron Maiden, yeah, Iron Maiden Live After Death flag, right next to me every day. I also got some Eddie figurines. I got a Power Slave Eddie action figure on my wall. I got a Live After Death Eddie pop, and I have another Eddie. Where's my other Eddie? Where'd he go? Oh, here he is. I got this Number of the Beast Eddie right here. So I think you can tell I'm a pretty big Iron Maiden fan. I've seen them live twice. I saw them on their Book of Souls tour, and I also saw them on their Legacy of the Beast tour in 2019. Probably best live show I've ever seen, Legacy of the Beast tour. Amazing show. Such a good show. So yes, big Iron Maiden fan right here. I love Iron Maiden. One of my all-time favorite bands. Probably my fourth or third favorite band, I'd say. I would say greatest metal band on the planet, in my opinion. They're up there. I'd say if I had to pick the top 5 best metal bands of all time, it would be Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Metallica, and... Slipknot. I don't know. No, Pantera. Pantera would be like my top 5. Would be like my number 5 pick. I do like Slipknot though, but I don't think they're a top 5. I would say Pantera. But yeah, Iron Maiden. Yeah, I'll definitely do Maiden and I'm sorry. I'll definitely do Sabbath and Priest next time. Next time I do one of these. I might want to do a different I might want to go back to doing a video game stream next time, but maybe I'll do some tier list. No, I'm not doing Avenged Sevenfold. I'm not a fan of Avenged Sevenfold. Have not listened to any of their shit past Nightmare. I'm not Like I heard that record in like one of their other albums and like was not impressed at all. Not a fan of Avenged Sevenfold. Sorry. But anyway, so let's start from the very beginning. So we've got Iron Maiden's debut album, their self-titled album. And yeah, awesome. Great album to start with. I think right off the bat, Iron Maiden, I think, had a really good idea of what they wanted to do as a band, kind of taking the next step of heavy metal evolution in the vein of, you know, some bands like Sabbath and Budgie and Deep Purple and Motorhead and Priest. You know, I think they had a pretty good idea of what they wanted to do, and they just went with it. So, I'm gonna hate myself for this. I need to make sure I know, because Bruce Dickinson did not sing on the first two albums. The original singer was Paul Di'Anno. Paul Di'Anno. He's really good, though. He was definitely a good vocalist. He's not as good as Bruce. I think objectively, Bruce is the best Iron Maiden singer. But Paul Di'Anno, very good singer. And I think he does a really good job on the first record and especially the Killers album. But yeah, the first Iron Maiden record has some of my favorite songs from them. Running Free, Remember Tomorrow, Phantom of the Opera, the title track, like the song Iron Maiden by the band Iron Maiden on the album Iron Maiden. That is one of my all-time favorite songs from them, like hands down. So I'm going to put the first Maiden album in A tier. That's an A tier album. Also, pretty much the Killers is like the exact same energy as the first record, if not just a little bit better, I'd say. Like Wrathchild, Murders in the Rue Morgue, I think is pronounced. The title track, Purgatory, Prodigal Son, Genghis Khan. Like, there's so many good songs on the Killers record. However, I think what really prevents it from being A tier mostly is just Paul Di'Anno. Like, again, not a bad vocalist by any means. He is great. But Bruce Dickinson, I mean, it's Bruce Dickinson! Murders in the Rue Morgue is, like, one of their most underrated tracks, like, to date. But, like, come on, it's Bruce Dickinson. He is unmatched. He's, like, the undefeated champion of the metal vocalist world. But again, Paul Di'Anno, still a really good singer. Killers record goes in A tier. But now we're getting into in my opinion, the holy trinity of Iron Maiden records. This is, in my opinion, I would say these next three albums are the peak of the classic era of heavy metal, in my opinion. These are like peak records, not just for Maiden, but for like the new wave of British metal and 80s metal. First we got Number of the Beast, the first album with Bruce Dickinson. Really good album, like fantastic album. I would say it's probably, like, of these next three records I'm about to talk about, I think it's the most overrated one. And that's not to say this is an overrated album by any means. This is a fantastic album. I mean, the title track alone is an anthem. Hallowed be thy name. Oh, so good. Hallowed be thy name alone, such a good record. Run to the Hills. 22 Acacia Avenue, super underrated track. Children of the Damned. Awesome album. Not a prisoner, I'm a free man. Like, that is a fantastic album. However, I will say the opening track, Invaders, like, I don't think they've ever even played that song live. And honestly, it's kind of a weird song to open the album with. Like, it's not a bad song, but it kind of feels like they're, like, to them what Escape is to Metallica. Like, it's not a bad song by any means, but it's definitely... It was a kind of an odd track to open the album with, but I think it does a decent job waking the listener up. But I think most of the like best songs on the album kind of come later in the album. But yeah, but still overall S tier album. S tier, definitely. What one of their, if not their most iconic album to date, Number of the Beast. Now we're getting into, in my opinion, this is a personal favorite for me, and one of their more underappreciated records from this era of Maiden. That would be Peace of Mind. Peace of Mind does still have some pretty big songs. I mean, this is the album with The Trooper, and The Trooper is like one of their top 5 like biggest songs of all time. But there are some other amazing songs on this record. Where Eagles Dare, Revelations. Well, I think my personal favorite Maiden song of all time is on this record, Flight of Icarus. That is my favorite song from Maiden of all time. I'm not even who's worse, Nickelback or Imagine Dragons. At least Nickelback has like guitars. Yeah, Flight of Icarus, such a good song. Die With Your Boots On, so good. Quest for Fire, To Tame a Land. I mean, so many good songs. Fly on your way like an eagle. Fly, touch the sun. Like, oh my God, it's so good. It's such a good album. I'm getting so giddy over this. Like, you can tell I'm already like a massive Maiden fanboy. Oh, I'm getting fanboy over this. This might actually be a hot take, but I think Peace of Mind is S tier. That is an S tier album. And like I said, I think you're gonna see. I think these next, not to spoil the next one, but these 3 albums that I'm talking about right now, these are all S tier. This is, like I said, in my opinion, the holy trinity of Iron Maiden's entire career. And now, of course, comes Power Slave, which, in my opinion, I think is their best album, like, objectively. I mean, Power Slave has the best opener of any of their records, being Aces High, and then, it goes into 2 Minutes to Midnight. And then, also on top of that, the rest of the songs, I think, are super... not only amazing, but I feel like Power Slave gets talked about a lot as like a really good album, but I don't know if people really do it justice. I mean, Lost for Words, Flash of the Blade, The Duelists, the title track, Rhyme of the Ancient Minister. Like, Rhyme of the Ancient Minister is like one of the best Maiden tracks of all time. Like, one of the probably the best I think this album has the best opener with Aces High and the best closer of any of their albums. I'm not doing Weird Al right now, but I do want to do a Weird Al tier list eventually. But I'd say but just to answer your question, my favorite parody song from him is Fat. My favorite non-parody Weird Al song is definitely Albuquerque. But yeah. Power Slave, S tier, no doubt. S tier. In fact, I mean, I would call these God tier albums. In all honesty, God tier. Yeah, God tier, God tier. Because like I did this with the Metallica ranking, where like I made Ride the Lightning an S tier. Honestly, I'll do that. Let me add another row. And I actually make this red. I'll make that S tier. I'm going to make this pink, God tier. And I'm actually going to move these into S tier. They're pretty great. Favorite, what's Moo Core? What's Moo Core? It's like favorite AC/DC song? Probably It's a Long Way to the Top. That's like my favorite AC/DC song. Anyway, next we have Somewhere in Time. I think it was going to be, I mean, Iron Maiden just did the impossible here. They released 3 of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time in a consecutive order. How you, like, it was going to be impossible to follow up Number of the Beast, and they managed to do that. And then I think it was going to be impossible to follow up Peace of Mind, and they did that. But with Power Slave being the peak of this trilogy of albums, it was going to be impossible to follow up that. So we got Somewhere in Time, which it's a good album. I like it. It's a good album. I mean, Wasted Years is a great one. Alexander the Great is also like one of their most underrated tracks. Stranger in a Strange Land, great song. But I think some of the other tracks on this one are a little boring. They're not bad. Not boring. A little bit unmemorable, but I don't know. I still think that this is a pretty good record from Maiden. I would say I'd put this in B tier at the very least. And then, of course, this is probably objectively the last of the classic Maiden records. Like, this was the final nail in the coffin for Maiden's classic era. And that would be Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. This is, in my opinion, probably one of, if not their most underrated record. Yeah, I mean, it's got some fantastic tracks. Excuse me. I don't want to get up right now because I'm fanboying so much, but I might need more water. But yeah, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Fantastic album. I mean, Moonchild, Infinite Dreams, the title track, The Prophecy, Only the Good Die Young. I mean, The Evil That Men Do. I mean, so many this is, in my opinion, their most underrated album. Absolutely. Favorite country song? Any Johnny Cash song, really. Yeah, Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. Fantastic album. Super underappreciated, in my opinion. That's going to go in A tier. Now we're starting to kind of get into the rocky part of Maiden's discography. So they did 2 albums with Bruce before he left to kind of pursue a solo career in the 90s. He did eventually come back, though, and he's been with the band ever since. But I think at this point, you could definitely tell that Bruce was starting to kind of run dry creatively with Iron Maiden. I think the rest of the band were kind of sapped of creativity at this point and didn't really know what to do. So we got No Prayer for the Dying, which I don't think anyone could deny is probably one of their weakest records to date. It's not an absolutely atrocious record, but it's definitely not a great album. It's okay. Like, I mean, Tail Gunner, I think that's the best way to describe it. It's like Dollar Store Aces High. But even then, Tail Gunner's a good one. I like Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. That's a good album too. But the rest of the tracks are just kind of whatever. Like, it's just a whatever okay album. I'm gonna put that in D tier. Fear of the Dark is also kind of a whatever album. However, it does have a little bit more memorable songs than No Prayer for the Dying. Especially the title track is, but honestly, one of my favorite Maiden songs, like, in general. Like, I love the song Fear of the Dark. It's a fantastic song. Also a great closing track. Be Quick or Be Dead, the opening track, is also great. But I feel like most of the songs in between, I mean, For Here to Eternity is also pretty good. But I don't know. I feel like most of the songs in between are just kind of range from just kind of being really dull to just kind of being okay. It's a serviceable album. I think definitely this was the point where I think Bruce definitely needed some time off for the band. Unfortunately, with that kind of came objectively their 2 worst albums, which we'll get into, but I'm gonna put Fear of the Dark in C tier. I think it's a C tier album. Um, oh boy. I'm just kind of like mentally preparing myself. The X Factor. So as I said, Bruce left the band for a while, and in that time frame, Iron Maiden released 2 albums with the new singer Blaze Bayley. Blaze isn't even really the worst aspect of this. He's not a terrible vocalist by any means, but I really don't think he was the best fit for Maiden as a whole. And I feel like the band, for the most part, especially on this record, just didn't care. Like, Signs of the Cross is just kind of an okay song. Like, I know, like, they still play Sign of the Cross, even with Bruce, like, live. But even then, I would rather just listen to the live version. I'd never want to listen to the studio version of Sign of the Cross. Like, it's probably the most tolerable song on the record, but even then, like I said, I'd rather just listen to the live version with Bruce. So, yeah, I don't like this album. I don't think it's good at all. It's definitely not a doo-doo album by any means, especially like compared to some of the other like trash albums that I've talked about. I definitely say I'd rather listen to it over Father of All and like 21st Century Breakdown, and I think I'd rather listen to it than Results May Vary or Saint Anger. I guess, yeah, I think I'd rather listen to it over these 2 albums too, but even then, if we're talking about quality for Maiden here, it's definitely an F tier. Favorite, what? I'm not answering that. Yeah, I think this is definitely an F tier album for Maiden as a whole, and in that similar vein, this is not an F tier album. This would be, Virtual 11, I think that's the Roman numeral. I think it's Virtual 11. Virtual XI, Virtual 11. This would be an F tier album as well, if it weren't for one thing, The Klansman. Because actually, I think that while I still prefer the live version with Bruce, the studio version with The Klansman, the studio version of The Klansman, good song. I think that really gave a lot of shining moments to Blaze Bayley and kind of showcased his technical prowess as a vocalist, and it feels like a Maiden song. Like, so I wouldn't recommend listening to this album in full, but definitely do yourself a favor and listen to The Klansman. Lightning Strikes Twice is an okay song in my opinion too. Like, it's okay, but yeah, The Klansman is probably the most standout track on this album. But now, Bruce is back. Now Bruce has officially returned, and everything is good, because after this slog of 4 albums that they put out, the classic Maiden is back, and we have possibly one of their best records, actually. Brave New World. Brave New World is such a good album. Not only as a comeback record, but just as a heavy metal album in general. Like, it's really bringing back that classic Maiden. It's really bringing back that classic Maiden feel. It's got everything you want in a Maiden album. I mean, the opening track alone, The Wicker Man, like, just from the start, you know this is going to be an amazing album. Title track is also great. Out of the Silent Planet is also one of my favorite Maiden songs in general. That's a fantastic album. Blood Brothers, The Mercenary, The Thin Line Between Love and Hate, it's a good song. Ghost of the Navigator. Yeah, it's all really great songs. Love Brave New World. That is a... I don't think it's on par with the first 2 Maiden records. I think those are still S tier. However, this is definitely an an A tier record, no doubt. A tier, definitely. But now, this one's a weird one. Dance of Death. I feel like a lot of people give this one too much shit because of the cover art. Because let's be honest here, it's atrocious. This is the worst cover art for Maiden by far. Like it looks like the album art here looks like an episode of Xavier Renegade Angel. Like it's really bad. And actually, even episodes of Xavier Renegade Angel look better than this. And at least that show has a punchline. And before anyone asks, I actually do like that show. I think it's pretty funny. But yeah, this is a good album from Maiden, I would say. This is a good album. There's some great songs on this one. I think one of my all-time personal favorite Maiden songs in general, probably in my top 10, would be Rainmaker. I love that song. No More Lies, also great. The title track is great. Journeyman, New Frontier, I think, is also a really good song. Yeah, there's some really good stuff on this one. Not every song works. Some of the songs are a little okay, or just kind of okay, or maybe overstay their welcome a smidge. But overall, I think that this is kind of an underappreciated Maiden album. I'm putting this one in B tier. Next we have, I forget the name of this one. I hate myself for this. This one has like their longest, Matter of Life and Death. And I don't know how I could forget the name of this one, because this is also a pretty good album from Maiden. I feel like it kind of just does exactly what they did on Dance of Death, kind of just following in that similar vein, just with maybe a bit of a different subject matter. But I mean, from the album cover alone, this is definitely more of a the subject of this one is definitely more, I think, based in like war and death and things like that. But there, even then, some amazing songs. I mean, Different World, These Colors Don't Run, Brighter Than 1,000 Suns is also a banger song. The Out of the Shadows, the reincarnation of Benjamin Brieg, is possibly, I think, one of the best Maiden songs of all time. That is a fantastic song, even like For the Greater Good of God. Yeah, there's some fantastic songs on Matter of Life and Death. Definitely the best choice for their opening track. And I think Maiden themselves felt very comfortable with this record, considering that they played it in its entirety on the tour for this record. So good for them. I think this is another B tier album, in my opinion. Okay. Now, I think Maiden's latest 3 records have been a little mixed. I think that they're all good albums, though. They're all good. There is one that I think kind of goes below C tier. That might be a bit of a hot take, but I'll tell you which one it is. I think you could probably guess which one it is. But I was there at the tour when I was as a baby, and my mom said I was grumpy because they were playing new stuff instead of the classic. Oh, that's too funny. But first we have the Final Frontier. This is a good album, but I feel like it's definitely more of a mixed bag than some of the other albums they put out that within this time frame. I think, when did this album come out? Like 2010? Yeah, 2010. So this was their first 2010s record. I mean, there's some great songs on this one. The Talesman, I really like that song. El Dorado is also a great song. I'm trying to think of the other songs I really liked. The Man That Would Be King, I think, is also pretty great. Yeah, I mean, there's still some. And the closing track, When the Wild Wind Blows. I already talked about my favorite Aerosmith song. I said Wait, did I say what my favorite Aerosmith song was? It's probably I don't know. Well, I don't know. I like the song Mamakin. It's kind of an older track for them, but I really like the one. I also like Living on the Edge. That's good. Walk This Way. Yeah, I like Aerosmith. I might again. I was saying I might do an Aerosmith ranking. I just have to like listen to all their albums because I have not heard all of their albums. I also love "Dude Looks Like a Lady." Like that's a great song. But yeah, Final Frontier is I think a good album, not a great one. I really don't have a ton to say about it. It's just kind of good. It's like okay, it's good. It's okay. It's an okay album. Listen to it. You'll have an okay time. C tier, definitely. Book of Souls. Book of Souls is a weird one. That was a double album, right? I listened to it recently. What the hell am I... Well, like, how did I forget this shit? Yeah, it was a... Yeah, Book of Souls was a double record, which was weird. I don't think it needed to be. It's kind of like Hardwired to Self-Destruct. It's like, why was this a double... Why was this a double LP? Like, there are Maiden records with, like, 10 to 12 tracks. Like, this didn't have to be a double LP. But even then, I would say the first half of the Book of Souls is pretty solid. The second half, I mean, Death or Glory is okay, but honestly, most of the second half of the record is pretty mid in my opinion. But the first half is very strong. If Eternity Should Fail, Speed of Light, The Great Unknown, the title track, When the Rivers Run Deep. I think all those songs are pretty banging, pretty solid. But yeah, I feel like the first half is really where this album shines, and the rest of it is just kind of okay. I think I'm gonna put Book of Souls also in C tier. But yeah, so now we have Suijin. Is that how you pronounce it? I probably just butchered that. How do you fucking pronounce this album's name? Senjutsu. I like the Japanese aesthetic on Eddie on the front cover. I think that was kind of cool. That's about it. This album was kind of whatever to me when I heard it, and when I listened to it again recently, it was still kind of whatever. I don't hate this album. I don't absolutely hate it. I just kind of felt it was a little boring. There wasn't really any major standout tracks on this album. Yeah, it was probably one of their most boring records that they've done in a long time, in my opinion. I really don't have much else to say beyond that. So, D tier. Yeah. But even with all that said, I mean, if you look at everything in the grand scheme of Maiden's discography, that's really only, like, even though, like, C tier is kind of, like, just okay, like, I still consider each of these records to be good in their own right, or at least have a lot of redeeming qualities that make me want to at least revisit them in full. But, so I would say that, like, Maiden have only ever had, like, 4, like, stinker albums, which is really good for a band like them to have such a consistent discography. Is quite an achievement. I mean, these 3 albums alone are God's here. To have like as good of a vocalist like Paul Di'Anno, and then for him to leave and then get an even better vocalist like Bruce Dickinson, like I would say Maiden has had one of the most successful I mean, Motorhead, yeah, it's pretty much the same album 22 times. I don't know if I'd want to do a Motorhead ranking. I love Motorhead, don't get me wrong. But yeah, like, it's pretty much the same record over and over again. But yeah, Motorhead is great. I love Motorhead. I would say pretty much, with the exception of like a few records, I would say like Ace of Spades and like Orgasmatron and like what else? I'm trying to think of like what other ones. Sorry, I have to like pull up. Yeah, like Ace of Spades, Orgasmatron, Bomber, and like, yeah, I'd say those three records. Those are all S tier in my opinion. Everything else in Motorhead's discography. Oh, Overkill. Overkill's an S tier record. Bomber, I think, is like an A tier record actually. Yeah, like Orgasmatron, Overkill, and Ace of Spades are all like S tier records. Oh, 1916 is such an underrated Motorhead record. Such a good album. I'd say most, if not, I don't think Motorhead has ever made a bad album in my opinion. They're definitely one of the more consistent like rock bands in my opinion. Because they just stick to their guns and they just do what they do. And they just do what they do, and you know, I respect that. I'd say like pretty much the lowest ranking I'd ever give for a Motorhead album is pretty much like a C tier. Yeah, I would say that. Like the lowest I give them is a C tier. However, their highs, I don't think even with that, Motorhead's highs don't ever really even come close to some of the God moments you hear with Maiden or Priest or even Sabbath. But even then, Motorhead is still a fantastic band. I love Motorhead. In fact, I have the War Pig, like their mascot. I have a pop figurine of it. So what does that tell you? Yeah, Lemmy was a god, and I'm actually what's it called? I actually did have the privilege of seeing Motorhead live. I saw them on their final tour when in 2015, and I saw them with Anthrax and Crobot, I think the band was. Yeah, it was a pretty awesome. That was a pretty awesome show. I loved that. That was one of the best shows I've ever been to, and being able to see Lemmy in person was a major privilege. But yeah, Iron Maiden, I think it was worth it to have maybe these 4 like mediocre albums because we have all these other incredible, amazing albums here. Like all these albums, in my opinion, even these 3 albums, I think they're all pretty great in their own right. Like even if they do have some blaring flaws, like these ones, and maybe even to an extent these ones, just all these Maiden records are so good, and I always kind of look forward to re-listening to each one of them. Just Iron Maiden is such a special band, and they are, in my opinion, my favorite and possibly the greatest heavy metal band on the planet. Yeah, Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is fantastic. So just to recap before we wrap things up, so this was my Linkin Park tier list. We got Meteora in S tier, Hybrid Theory in A tier. B tier, we got The Hunting Party and Menace to Midnight. C tier is 1,000 Suns. There was no D tier album, and then at the bottom, an E tier, we got Living Things, and then One More Light. I didn't feel like putting in an F tier because it's kind of hard to talk about that record in the wake of Chester's passing. So I think objectively, it's their weakest album, but I feel kind of dirty if I was putting in an F tier. Then, of course, we got the Limp Bizkit discography. They've never made an S tier album. I think at best, like Significant Other is at least like an A tier album, and then yeah, that's Limp Bizkit's discography. Yeah. Then of course we got Metallica's. God tier with Master of Puppets, S tier with Ride the Lightning, and then Kill 'Em All and Black Album, I think, are both A tier records. B tier is Injustice for All and Hardwired. Load and Death Magnetic at C tier. Reload and 72 Seasons at D. And then Fuck This Album at with Saint Anger. And then with Green Day, S tier with Dookie. We got A tier with Nimrod and American Idiot. B tier with Kerplunk, Insomniac, and Trey. C tier, we've got 39 Smooth, Warning, and Uno. And then with D, we've got Revolution Radio and Saviors. With E tier, we've got 21st Century Breakdown and Dose. And then Father of All. Yeah. And then the grand finale with Iron Maiden. We've got the three of the greatest metal albums of all time up here. We've got two of the greatest early starting points. I think these two albums are the greatest starting point for any metal band in general. Some other two fantastic, pretty underrated albums in my opinion. Some good albums. These are good albums. Some okay albums. I even if they're okay, they're also good. They're all worth a listen. And then we got these albums. You can kind of just skip these. They each got some good redeeming songs on them, but you don't have to listen to these in full. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. So I definitely enjoyed doing this kind of discussion stream. Kind of a breakup from doing some video games, so I definitely enjoyed this. I think I'm gonna do it again, and a lot of people tuned in. So, and I got to talk a lot of good music, a lot of good hot takes. I wish I could actually play some music on stream, but I'll get copyrighted. So, fortunately, I can't do that. But yeah, there's some pretty great stuff. So anyway, I will see you all next time.